the brain feels no pain. The brain, despite being the control center of everything you feel, think, and experience, is ironically incapable of feeling pain itself. Surgeons can cut into brain tissue, probe deep into its folds, and even remove sections while a patient is wide awake without the brain registering any pain. What you feel in a headache, in trauma, or even when struck on the skull isn't your brain crying out, but the surrounding nerves, muscles, and blood vessels screaming through their signals. The brain itself is silent, eerily detached from the very sense it orchestrates for the rest of the body. This fact is not just scientific curiosity. It's deeply unsettling when you think about it. The organ that defines who you are, the seat of your memories, your fears, your personality, the vault of your deepest secrets, has no defense mechanism of pain to tell you it's in danger. A tumor can grow undetected, blood can clot, cells can starve of oxygen, and your brain will not warn you until the damage spills over into the rest of your nervous system. It makes you realize how fragile you are, how close you constantly exist to an invisible line where life and identity can be altered forever without a single warning sensation. And yet, this very silence is why doctors can perform miracles. Awake brain surgery allows surgeons to map out speech, memory, and movement by interacting with a conscious patient while touching the tissue itself. The brain sits there quietly, unaware, letting life be reshaped without resistance. It's haunting to think the thing that gives you awareness has no awareness of its own suffering. The brain consumes 20% of body energy. The brain is a relentless engine, quietly burning through about 20% of the body's total energy, even while you're sitting still, doing nothing at all. That's 1/5 of all the calories you eat, all the oxygen you breathe, all the fuel your body works so hard to deliver. This massive consumption doesn't go to moving muscles or digesting food. It's spent on keeping thoughts alive, maintaining memories, firing electrical impulses that sustain the constant storm of consciousness. Even at rest, your brain is never resting. It's haunting when you think about it. This 3-pound mass of tissue hidden inside your skull is so demanding that it can drain you without ever moving a muscle. Skip a meal, deprive it of glucose, and the fog sets in. Your concentration shatters, your emotions swing, your willpower collapses. Your brain is a tyrant, consuming first and leaving the scraps for the rest of your body. Children's brains, astonishingly, can take nearly half of their daily energy just to grow connections and wire their sense of reality, explaining why they tire so easily and why learning reshapes them so dramatically. This energy hunger is both a marvel and a vulnerability. It explains why mental exhaustion can feel as real and crushing as physical fatigue. It explains why sleep is non-negotiable, because your brain's housekeeping takes just as much fuel as your daytime thoughts. And it reveals something chilling. Cut off its supply of oxygen or sugar for even a few minutes, and the very thing that defines you begins to die, piece by piece, neuron by neuron, as your identity fades into silence. The brain is 90% support cells, 10% neurons. When people imagine the brain, they often picture a web of neurons firing electric sparks, carrying thoughts and memories like tiny lightning bolts. But the truth is far stranger and less romantic. Neurons make up only about 10% of the brain's total cells. The vast majority, around 90%, are support cells called glia. These cells don't get the glory of thought, memory, or imagination, but without them, neurons couldn't survive for a second. Glia are the silent guardians of your mind. They feed neurons, clean up toxic waste, repair damage, and even guide the growth of connections that make learning possible. Some glial cells insulate neurons, wrapping them in fatty layers that let signals travel at lightning speed. Others patrol like immune soldiers, protecting the brain from infection. And still others whisper chemical instructions that shape mood, memory, and attention in ways scientists are only beginning to understand. What makes this fact emotionally gripping is how it reframes what you think you are. We're taught to believe the self is built from neurons, the thinking cells, but if 90% of your brain is made of silent, invisible supporters, then your very existence depends less on fiery sparks of thought than on the quiet labor of billions of unseen caretakers. And when these glial cells fail, the results are devastating. Diseases like multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, and even psychiatric disorders can emerge, all because the invisible majority stopped holding the brain together. It's unsettling to realize the you think of as a mind is perched on a foundation of cells you never even knew existed, silently keeping your identity alive. The brain changes memories each recall. Every time you remember something, your brain does not simply pull a file from storage and replay it like a movie. It rebuilds it. Memories are fragile reconstructions, stitched together from fragments stored in different parts of the brain. When you recall an event, you are actually taking it apart and putting it back together. And in the process, details shift, fade, or even get replaced with new information. That means the memory you cherish as truth may already be a distorted version of what really happened. This is why eyewitness testimony can be terrifyingly unreliable. A single leading question or suggestion can alter a person's recollection, planting details that never existed. Over time, these false elements fuse with the original memory, becoming indistinguishable from reality. Your brain is tricking you, weaving lies into the fabric of your past, and you will swear by them with absolute conviction. It is haunting to think that your identity, built on the sum of your memories, rests on foundations that shift every time you revisit them. A childhood moment, a heartbreak, a triumph, none of them are frozen. They are rewritten every time you bring them into the light, eroded and reshaped until they no longer belong to the person who first lived them. And yet, this imperfection is also a survival tool. It allows the brain to adapt, to soften pain, to strengthen lessons, to blend old experiences with new insights. But it also means that what you call truth is fluid, a story constantly edited in the theater of your mind, leaving you to wonder if you've ever truly remembered anything exactly as it was. The brain cleans toxins during sleep. Every night, when you drift into sleep, your brain begins a process as vital as breathing. It opens up a hidden system known as the glymphatic pathway, a network that flushes away waste products and toxins that build up during the day. Proteins, chemical byproducts, and even debris linked to Alzheimer's and dementia are washed out like sewage from a city. Your brain literally rinses itself clean, something it cannot do while you are awake. This cleansing is why sleep feels restorative in ways no amount of rest or relaxation while awake can match. Deprive yourself of sleep, and the toxins remain, clogging neural circuits, dulling thought, slowing memory, and warping mood. That foggy, heavy feeling after an all-nighter is not just tiredness, it's your brain drowning in its own waste. Prolong it, and the damage becomes deeper, increasing the risk of degenerative diseases that slowly erase who you are. It is haunting to imagine how much of your clarity, your intelligence, and your very personality depends on this nightly ritual. The hours you spend unconscious are not wasted. They are the difference between a mind that thrives and a mind that deteriorates. Sleep is not optional self-care. It is survival. And the cruelest part? Your brain never tells you when the toxins are piling up too high. It simply pushes on, burning energy, thinking, remembering, until the rot seeps into your identity. When you finally collapse into sleep, the silent janitors go to work, saving you again, scrubbing away the shadows that, if left unchecked, would slowly turn your brilliance into confusion. The brain responds to placebos. The placebo effect is one of the most astonishing demonstrations of how powerful the brain truly is. When you take a sugar pill believing it's medicine, your brain doesn't just pretend you're better. It actually triggers measurable physical changes. Pain can lessen, anxiety can fade, even symptoms of diseases like Parkinson's can improve, all because your brain believes healing is happening. It's not trickery of the body, it's the brain rewriting its own chemistry in response to expectation. What makes this so haunting is how easily belief can shape biology. The simple conviction that you are being healed activates endorphins, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters that can relieve pain and alter mood. Brain scans show that placebo treatments light up the same neural pathways as actual drugs. In essence, your mind becomes your own pharmacy, dispensing relief without the chemical substance you think you're taking. But there's a darker edge. If belief can heal, it can also harm. The nocebo effect, the evil twin of placebo, happens when expectation of side effects makes the body suffer them, even from inert pills. People can feel nausea, headaches, or pain simply because they were warned they might. The brain's power doesn't discriminate between hope and fear. It amplifies whichever story you feed it. This forces you to face an unsettling truth. Much of what you feel may not come from the outside world at all, but from within, dictated by faith, expectation, and suggestion. The line between real healing and imagined relief blurs, leaving you to wonder how much of your suffering has been written by your brain's belief and how much of your recovery too. The brain shrinks with trauma. Trauma does not just scar the mind emotionally, it can physically reshape the brain. When someone experiences severe or repeated trauma, regions like the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex can literally shrink in size. The hippocampus, responsible for memory and learning, may wither under constant stress, making it harder to form new memories or retrieve old ones. The prefrontal cortex, which governs decision-making and impulse control, can thin, leaving a person more vulnerable to anxiety, fear, and emotional outbursts. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can grow overactive, making the world feel dangerous even in moments of safety. This silent reshaping explains why trauma survivors often struggle with flashbacks, hypervigilance, and memory gaps. Their brains have been rewired into survival mode, sacrificing clarity and calm for raw, urgent fear responses. What makes this fact so devastating is that trauma leaves its fingerprint not only on emotions, but on the very architecture of the self. The person you were before trauma, in a biological sense, is not the same as the person you are after it. And yet, this truth is both heartbreaking and hopeful. While trauma shrinks the brain, healing can regrow it. Practices like therapy, meditation, exercise, and safe relationships can slowly rebuild lost connections, increase hippocampal volume, and calm an overactive amygdala. The scars may never fully disappear, but the brain's plasticity, the ability to rewire and regrow, offers survivors a way back toward wholeness. The haunting part is that trauma leaves an invisible wound, one you cannot see in a scar or bruise, but one that reshapes the very core of who you are. The brain has face neurons. Hidden deep inside your temporal lobe, the brain holds cells so specific, so eerily tuned, that they fire only when you see a certain face. In one famous experiment, a single neuron in a patient's brain lit up only when shown pictures of Jennifer Aniston. Not objects, not landscapes, not other people, just her. These have been called face neurons, or more dramatically, grandmother cells, because they respond with laser precision to a single familiar identity. Think about the weight of that for a moment. Out of billions of neurons, a few may exist solely to recognize your mother's smile, your child's eyes, or the face of someone you once loved. They don't care about the background, the clothes, or the lighting. They respond to the essence of that person's identity burned into your memory. And when that face appears, they fire, declaring recognition with a silent spark. It's haunting to realize how much of who you are rests on such delicate wiring. Damage or disease can rob these neurons of their function, leaving people with prosopagnosia, face blindness, unable to recognize even their closest family. Imagine looking at your spouse and not knowing who they are, their face reduced to an unfamiliar blur. But the existence of these neurons also explains why faces are so powerful in shaping human experience. They anchor us, comfort us, warn us, and connect us. Your brain has carved out space for specific people in your life at the cellular level, weaving them into your very biology. Those neurons are not just firing at images, they are firing at the story of who matters to you most. The brain can work with half removed. One of the most haunting truths about the brain is its resilience. A person can lose nearly half of it and still live, think, and even thrive. This is not theory. It's reality for children and adults who undergo a radical procedure called hemispherectomy, where one hemisphere of the brain is surgically removed to stop uncontrollable seizures. Against everything we might imagine, patients often walk away with personalities intact, memories preserved, and the ability to continue learning. How is this possible? The secret lies in neuroplasticity, the brain's extraordinary power to rewire itself. When one hemisphere is removed, the remaining half begins to adapt, rerouting signals, taking over lost functions, and compensating for what's gone. In children especially, this adaptability is astonishing. They can regain speech, movement, and even vision that in theory should have been lost forever. It's as if the brain refuses to surrender, reshaping itself to survive no matter the cost. But the emotional weight of this fact is staggering. Imagine what it means. Half of the very thing that makes you you can be cut away, and you will still be here, still capable of love, laughter, memory, and identity. It forces you to confront the mystery of consciousness, how fragile it seems, yet how unbreakable it proves to be. The thought lingers like a shadow. If you can survive with only half your brain, what part of you is truly essential? Where does you really live? If not in the physical bulk of neurons, then in the patterns, the connections, the stubborn will of the mind to endure, even when pieces of itself are gone forever. The brain rewires after injury. When the brain is damaged, whether by trauma, stroke, or surgery, it doesn't always surrender to loss. It fights back in the most extraordinary way. Through a process known as neuroplasticity, the brain rewires itself, forging new pathways and rerouting functions to areas once thought incapable of handling them. It's as if, in the chaos of destruction, the brain becomes an architect, redrawing its own blueprints to survive. This is why someone who loses speech after a stroke can sometimes learn to speak again. Neighboring brain regions, once silent, begin to shoulder the burden of damaged ones. A person paralyzed by injury may, through grueling therapy, train healthy neurons to take over lost movements. Even memories thought erased can resurface when the brain shifts connections, searching for alternate routes back to itself. The adaptability is breathtaking, almost defiant, as though the brain refuses to let go of its identity without a fight. And yet, the emotional weight of this fact is staggering. Neuroplasticity is not instant or easy. It requires struggle, repetition, and willpower. Watching a loved one relearn how to walk, or seeing someone painstakingly form words they once spoke effortlessly, is both heartbreaking and awe-inspiring. It proves that the brain is not static. It is a living, changing landscape, one that can bend but not always break. What unsettles us most is the realization that this capacity lies within all of us, dormant, waiting. The brain you have today is not the brain you will have tomorrow. It is rewriting itself constantly, sculpted by pain, recovery, and experience, leaving you forever changed in ways both visible and invisible. The brain thickens with meditation. Meditation is not just a practice of calming the mind. It can physically reshape the brain. Studies using MRI scans have shown that people who meditate regularly develop thicker gray matter in regions linked to attention, memory, and emotional regulation, most notably the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. This means that sitting quietly with your breath or focusing on awareness isn't just a spiritual act. It's an exercise that strengthens the very structure of your brain. What makes this fact so moving is how it proves that stillness builds resilience. In a world that glorifies constant motion, silence and focus are literally expanding the areas of the brain that help you remain calm, thoughtful, and in control. For people struggling with anxiety, depression, or stress, this thickening of neural tissue can be life-changing. The prefrontal cortex grows more capable of keeping the amygdala, the fear center, in check, creating a buffer against overwhelming emotions. Even more powerful is the idea that meditation offers a kind of rebirth. Trauma, stress, and aging all tend to shrink critical brain regions, but meditation appears to reverse that damage. Each session is like nourishment for the mind, slowly layering strength where fragility once lived. And unlike medication or surgery, the tool is already within you, waiting in your breath, your stillness, your awareness, to know that your brain can be reshaped not by force, but by quiet presence, reveals a truth both comforting and profound. You have the ability to change the very organ that creates your reality simply by choosing to pause. The brain loses cells from stress. Stress is not just a feeling, it is a slow, invisible predator that eats away at your brain itself. When you live under constant stress, your body floods with cortisol, the hormone meant to help you survive danger. But while useful in short bursts, chronic exposure to cortisol becomes toxic. It attacks the hippocampus, the area responsible for memory and learning, and slowly kills off brain cells. Over time, this shrinkage makes it harder to focus, harder to recall details, and harder to regulate emotions. What's terrifying is that stress doesn't just leave you tired, it rewires you. A brain under siege from cortisol becomes hypervigilant, stuck in survival mode, scanning for threats that may not exist. Your decision-making weakens, your creativity shuts down, and your emotional balance collapses. You don't just feel stress, you become stress, your identity hijacked by chemical signals you can't control. This cellular loss can be devastatingly personal. Imagine forgetting things you've always known, feeling your mind slip as if pieces of yourself are being erased. People who endure prolonged stress often describe a fog, a sense that their thoughts are not as sharp as they once were, that their mind has been dulled. And it isn't just perception. Their brain tissue has literally thinned, pruned by relentless chemical storms. Yet the most haunting truth is that your brain doesn't cry out when it's being damaged. There's no pain, no alarm bell, only the gradual erosion of who you are. Stress silently robs you, neuron by neuron, until you realize too late how much of yourself has been consumed. The brain predicts reality. Your brain is not a passive recorder of the world. It is a prediction machine. Every moment before your senses even finish delivering information, your brain is already guessing what you will see, hear, or feel. It builds a model of reality based on past experiences, then uses incoming signals merely to correct or confirm those expectations. In truth, you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as your brain expects it to be. This is why you can read words with missing letters, why you hear a sentence correctly even in a noisy room, and why optical illusions can trick you so easily. Your brain is constantly filling in gaps, smoothing over errors, and painting in details that may not exist. It does this because prediction is faster than raw perception, and speed means survival. The price, however, is that your reality is always part truth, part imagination. Emotionally, this fact is unsettling. It means what you think of as your reality may be a carefully edited hallucination that just happens to line up with the outside world most of the time. Your fears, your hopes, your memories, all of them shape how your brain predicts, and therefore how you see. When you expect rejection, you notice it everywhere. When you expect kindness, you find it in strangers' faces. The chilling implication is this: reality doesn't simply happen to you. It is built inside your skull, moment by moment, prediction by prediction. You live not in the raw truth of the world, but in a story your brain tells you, a story that can change with every expectation you carry into the next moment. The brain creates false memories. The brain is not a flawless recorder of reality. It is a storyteller, and sometimes that story is fiction dressed as truth. Every time you recall an event, your brain pulls fragments from scattered regions and rebuilds the memory. In that rebuilding, details can shift. A suggestion, a photograph, or even someone else's story can slip in unnoticed, and over time, your mind accepts it as your own. These fabrications aren't just vague impressions. They feel vivid, emotional, and utterly real. That's why people can swear with unshakable certainty that they saw something that never happened, or why entire groups can share the same false recollection, a phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. False memories aren't fuzzy illusions. They light up the same neural pathways as genuine ones. The brain cannot always tell the difference, and neither can you. It is terrifying to realize that the moments you hold sacred, your first love, a childhood joy, a painful betrayal, might already be warped, rewritten not by time alone, but by your own mind. Scientists have implanted false memories in lab animals by stimulating neurons, proving how malleable memory truly is. But humans don't need electrodes to experience this. Subtle cues, leading questions, or repeated retellings can reshape your past until it's something that never existed. The emotional weight of this truth is crushing. Your identity, built from the scaffolding of your memories, rests on foundations that may not be real. The past you cling to might be a story your brain authored without your permission, leaving you forever haunted by the question, what if the most vivid moments of your life never happened the way you remember them? The brain lights up with music. When you listen to music, your brain doesn't just hear, it explodes into activity. Unlike language, which primarily engages specific areas, music activates a vast network all at once. The auditory cortex deciphers rhythm and pitch. The motor regions pulse in sync with beats. The limbic system floods with emotion, and memory centers flare as familiar melodies awaken long-forgotten moments. It is one of the rare experiences that ignites nearly every corner of the brain, like a fireworks show inside your skull. This is why a single song can make you weep, why a chorus can lift you into euphoria, and why a melody from childhood can collapse decades of time in an instant. Music hijacks the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine, the same chemical that fuels desire and addiction. It explains why the chills you feel at a soaring note are real physiological reactions, a surge of neurotransmitters coursing through your body because your brain interprets beauty as survival itself. What makes this truth so powerful is its reach into healing. Patients who have lost speech after strokes can sing words before they can speak them because music rewires the damaged brain and opens back doors into language. People with Alzheimer's can forget the names of their children, yet still hum the songs of their youth, proving that music burrows deeper than memory loss. Music does not just entertain, it transforms. It bypasses logic and pierces straight into emotion, proving that your brain is wired not just to think or survive, but to feel, to connect, and to be moved beyond words. The brain shrinks if dehydrated. Dehydration doesn't just dry out your body, it physically shrinks your brain. Even a mild drop in hydration can cause brain tissue to contract, pulling it away from the skull and forcing it to work harder to complete the simplest tasks. This shrinkage can be measured in scans, showing that the organ that defines you is literally withering without water. The effect is not just structural, it's deeply personal. Concentration falters, memory slips, and mood darkens, as though the essence of who you are is being drained sip by sip. What makes this frightening is how subtle it can be. You don't have to collapse in the desert to feel the damage. Everyday neglect, skipping water, pushing through fatigue, replacing hydration with caffeine or alcohol, can begin stripping away clarity, making you slower, foggier, more irritable. You think it's stress, or lack of sleep, or distraction, but underneath, your brain has quietly shrunken in response to thirst. For children and the elderly, this shrinkage can be devastating. In kids, dehydration impacts learning and development, stunting their ability to focus. In older adults, it can mimic dementia symptoms, leaving families terrified as their loved one suddenly forgets, stumbles, or acts confused, all because their brain has pulled back within its own shell. And though rehydration can restore some of this lost volume, the haunting reality remains. Every moment you deny your brain the water it needs, you are letting it collapse inwards, surrendering sharpness, stability, and even pieces of your personality. Your brain does not scream for help. It simply shrinks, silently unraveling the mind you rely on. The brain holds emotions approximately 90 seconds. When a strong emotion surges through you, anger, fear, sadness, excitement, your brain and body light up with a cascade of chemical reactions. Stress hormones flood your bloodstream, your heart races, your muscles tighten, and your focus narrows. But here's the haunting truth. Left on its own, without your mind feeding it, the raw physiological response to an emotion lasts only about 90 seconds. After that, the chemicals dissipate, the body calms, and the storm fades. So why do we stay angry for hours, anxious for days, or heartbroken for months? Because we replay it. Each time you think about the event, each time you nurse the hurt or rehearse the fear, your brain triggers the same cascade all over again. You are not reliving the emotion, you are recreating it. In a cruel twist, the mind can keep the body drowning in emotions long after the body was ready to let them go. This fact is both liberating and devastating. It means your rage or despair doesn't own you. It's your thoughts that keep it alive. But it also means much of your suffering is self-inflicted, a prison built from your own replays. Imagine how many moments of your life have been consumed by emotions that, biologically, should have lasted less than 2 minutes. The knowledge cuts deep. Your brain can torture you with echoes of feelings that should have been brief flashes. The event may have ended long ago, but every time you recall it, your brain resurrects the pain as if it were new, chaining you to an emotion that should have already died. The brain rewires through reading. Reading is not a natural skill we are born with. It is something the brain has to build from scratch. Unlike speech, which unfolds instinctively in childhood, reading demands that the brain repurpose circuits designed for other tasks, like vision and language, and weave them together into something entirely new. Each time you trace words across a page, your brain is actively rewiring itself, linking visual recognition with sound, meaning, and imagination. This rewiring doesn't just allow you to decode letters, it reshapes the way you think. Studies show that reading strengthens the corpus callosum, the bridge between the brain's hemispheres, allowing for faster communication. It thickens the gray matter in areas that govern comprehension and empathy, making it easier to step into someone else's perspective. Reading fiction, in particular, lights up the same neural circuits used in real-life social interactions, giving you the eerie ability to live the emotions of characters as though they were your own. But the emotional weight of this secret lies in its permanence. Every book you read leaves a physical trace, rewiring connections that will never be exactly the same again. A child raised with stories will have a brain literally sculpted differently from one raised without them. Even as an adult, the act of reading is brain training, chiseling away at old pathways and carving new ones. The haunting truth is that each page you turn changes you in ways you cannot feel but will carry for life. Your very identity is shaped by the silent rewiring that happens every time your eyes scan a line of text. The brain idles in a default network. Even when you believe you're doing nothing, staring out the window, lost in thought, drifting during a quiet moment, your brain is far from silent. It slips into what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a web of regions that come alive when the outside world no longer demands your attention. This network fuels daydreams, wandering thoughts, self-reflection, and the replays of memories that loop like unfinished stories in your mind. It's unsettling to realize that when you aren't focused, your brain turns inward, weaving narratives about who you are, who you were, and who you might become. This idle state is when regrets resurface, when fantasies take form, and when the fragile sense of self is quietly stitched together. The brain at rest is not resting. It is obsessively constructing identity. This hidden activity explains why people can feel haunted during moments of stillness. The default mode network dredges up unhealed wounds, unfinished business, and fears about the future. Yet, it is also the birthplace of creativity, where disconnected ideas collide and form insights that logic alone cannot deliver. Some of history's greatest breakthroughs were born not in work, but in wandering thought, when the brain was idling and suddenly lit with inspiration. What makes this so emotionally gripping is that your idle brain reveals what truly owns you. The thoughts that emerge uninvited, longings, regrets, dreams, are the ones that define you more than the ones you consciously choose. The default mode network is proof that silence is never empty. It is filled with the raw, unfiltered echo of who you really are. The brain syncs with rhythms. The brain is not just an isolated organ humming along in silence. It is constantly tuning itself to the rhythms of the world around you, from the beat of music to the cadence of someone's voice to the steady tick of a clock. Your brain waves begin to synchronize, falling into step with external patterns. This phenomenon, called entrainment, is so powerful that a simple rhythm can change how you think, how you feel, and even how your body moves without you realizing it. Think about why music can pull you into its pulse, making your foot tap or your heart race. Your brain's electrical oscillations actually lock onto the beat, creating a shared tempo between the world outside and your inner mind. In conversations, your brain mirrors the rhythm of the person speaking, adjusting your own speech and body language in ways that build connection. Even your sleep cycles are tuned by the natural rhythm of light and dark, reminding you that your brain is wired to dance to the world's beat. But there's a darker side. When rhythms are chaotic, blaring alarms, noisy environments, erratic signals, the brain can't find harmony. It grows restless, distracted, and stressed, trapped in patterns that drain focus and peace. Soldiers exposed to weapon blasts sometimes develop long-term brain rhythm disruptions, leading to cognitive and emotional instability. At its core, this truth is both beautiful and haunting. Your brain is not fully your own. It is porous, constantly bending and molding itself to the pulses it absorbs. A song, a crowd, even the silence between heartbeats. Your brain listens, syncs, and shifts, shaping your inner world to match the rhythm outside. The brain's memory centers weaken first with alcohol. The first parts of your brain to falter under the influence of alcohol are the memory centers, especially the hippocampus. This tiny seahorse-shaped structure is responsible for forming new memories, and alcohol disrupts it with ruthless efficiency. That's why after just a few drinks, you may struggle to recall names, forget conversations, or wake up with a terrifying blackout, entire chunks of life gone as though they never happened. The brain wasn't just impaired, it failed to record the moment at all. This is not just about clumsiness or poor decisions, it is about erasure. While alcohol numbs inhibition by dulling the prefrontal cortex, it attacks memory formation even harder, cutting off the fragile process of turning short-term moments into lasting imprints. That is why someone can laugh, dance, and speak while drinking, yet wake the next day unable to piece together the night. The brain lived it, but it never kept the record. What makes this so unsettling is how invisible it feels. You don't sense the memory slipping away. You only notice the void afterward, the chilling realization that part of your life has been deleted. Over time, heavy drinking does more than cause temporary blackouts. It scars the hippocampus itself, leading to long-term memory loss, cognitive decline, and in severe cases, a haunting disorder called Korsakoff's syndrome, where the ability to form new memories is shattered. Alcohol doesn't just make you drunk, it steals time from you, precious moments that should have been yours forever. And the cruel part is that you may never know exactly what was lost, only that pieces of your story are gone, swallowed whole by a brain that could not hold them. The brain boosts connectivity on psychedelics. When psychedelics like psilocybin, LSD, or DMT enter the brain, something extraordinary happens. Regions that normally stay separated begin to communicate with one another. Brain scans reveal a sudden explosion of connectivity, with new pathways forming between areas that rarely, if ever, exchange signals. The rigid borders of ordinary consciousness dissolve, replaced by a shimmering web of crosstalk that can feel like awakening into a wider reality. This surge of connectivity is why users often describe profound insights, vivid hallucinations, and a sense of oneness. The brain is no longer locked into its usual patterns. Instead, it becomes fluid, blending senses, mixing thoughts with feelings, and unlocking associations buried deep within the mind. This is how synesthesia, hearing colors, tasting sounds, can emerge, and why creativity and problem-solving can feel supercharged. But it's not only about strange perceptions. For those suffering from depression, anxiety, or PTSD, this rewiring can temporarily break cycles of rigid thought that keep them trapped. The brain, stuck in loops of fear or despair, is shaken loose, given a chance to reset, to imagine new ways of being. Studies show that even after the psychedelic effects wear off, the heightened connectivity can linger, sparking lasting shifts in mood and perspective. Yet the haunting side is clear. Opening every door in the brain comes with risk. For some, the flood of connectivity brings not healing but terror, paranoia, panic, or visions too overwhelming to endure. It reveals how fragile the walls of the mind really are, and how easily they can be dismantled to show a raw, unfiltered universe that most of us are never meant to see. The brain consolidates memory in sleep. When you close your eyes at night, your brain begins one of its most vital tasks, turning fragile, short-term experiences into lasting memories. During deep stages of sleep, neurons fire in rhythmic bursts, replaying patterns of activity from the day as though rehearsing what just happened. These rehearsals strengthen synapses, weaving new knowledge, skills, and moments into the fabric of long-term memory. Without this nightly process, learning slips away, conversations blur, and life itself becomes harder to hold on to. What makes this so haunting is that you often don't realize the weight of it until it's gone. After a night of little sleep, you might not only feel tired, you forget things you swore you knew, stumble over details, or struggle to concentrate. It isn't weakness, it's your brain failing to lock in the experiences of yesterday. Students cramming late into the night, parents running on empty, workers skipping rest. They aren't just tired, they are erasing parts of their lives by robbing the brain of its chance to preserve them. The emotional sting comes when you realize how fragile memory truly is. A conversation with someone you love, a moment of laughter, a deep insight, all of it depends on whether you allow your brain the sleep it needs to save it. Miss that window, and the memory fades into static, as though it never happened. Sleep is not simply rest, it is the invisible archivist of your life, tirelessly deciding which moments to keep and which to discard. Every night you deny it, you gamble with your past, your learning, and the very story of who you are. The brain rewires under loneliness. Loneliness doesn't just make you feel empty, it physically reshapes your brain. When social connection is stripped away, the circuits designed for bonding and belonging begin to alter themselves. Areas like the amygdala, which governs fear and vigilance, become hyperactive, making the world feel more threatening. At the same time, reward pathways that light up with human contact grow dull, leaving you less motivated to seek out interaction. In this way, loneliness becomes a trap. The longer it lasts, the more your brain rewires itself to expect isolation, making it harder to reach for others. Scientists have found that prolonged loneliness increases sensitivity to rejection while weakening the ability to trust. It primes the brain for self-preservation at the expense of connection, turning protective walls into prisons. This is why people who feel chronically alone often withdraw further, even when they desperately crave closeness. Their brain has been reshaped to survive solitude by rejecting the very thing it needs most. The emotional weight of this truth is devastating. Loneliness doesn't just hurt, it rewrites your nervous system to keep you in pain. It chips away at memory, disrupts sleep, and increases the risk of depression and dementia. The organ that thrives on human connection begins to starve, leaving scars that linger even after relationships are restored. And yet, the haunting part is how invisible it is. You may not feel the wiring shifting day by day. You only notice the growing distance inside yourself, the mistrust, the numbness, the exhaustion, until one day you realize your brain has taught you to live without the very connections that once made life worth living. The brain is shaped by gut microbes. Deep within your gut lives an unseen world, trillions of microbes that outnumber your own human cells. These tiny organisms do far more than digest food. They produce neurotransmitters, hormones, and chemical messengers that travel through your bloodstream and even along the vagus nerve, directly shaping the way your brain thinks, feels, and reacts. The microbiome is not just a passenger in your body, it is a hidden architect of your mind. Research has revealed something unsettling. Anxiety, depression, memory, and even decision-making can all be influenced by the state of your gut. A disrupted microbiome can trigger inflammation, imbalance brain chemistry, and leave you vulnerable to mood disorders. Conversely, a healthy, diverse gut environment can sharpen clarity, stabilize emotions, and protect against stress. It means the way you feel on your darkest days may not only be born from your thoughts, but from microscopic battles inside your belly. This truth can be both liberating and disturbing. If your gut flora are thriving, you may experience calm, resilience, and joy. But if they are starved, destroyed by antibiotics, or overwhelmed by poor diet, they can drag your brain into fog and despair. In essence, you are not fully in control of your mind. Part of who you are, your moods, your cravings, your sense of well-being, belongs to colonies of bacteria quietly pulling strings from the shadows. It's chilling to realize your identity may not live solely in your brain at all, but in the dark, unseen ecosystems of your gut, where billions of silent passengers influence the story you believe is your own. The brain grows neurons in adulthood. For decades, scientists believed the adult brain was fixed, that once childhood ended, no new neurons would ever grow again. But this myth has been shattered. The adult brain does, in fact, generate new neurons through a process called neurogenesis, especially in the hippocampus, the region that shapes memory, learning, and emotional balance. Even in your 20s, 40s, or 70s, your brain is quietly creating new cells that can be woven into the circuitry of your mind. The discovery is both breathtaking and humbling. It means that your brain is not a static organ, but a living, evolving landscape, capable of renewal and rebirth long after youth. Exercise, deep learning, meaningful experiences, and even certain diets can spark this growth, fueling resilience and sharpening memory. Each new neuron is like a seed of possibility, waiting to be integrated into the fabric of who you are. And yet, the fragility of this gift is haunting. Stress, trauma, poor sleep, and aging can strangle neurogenesis, slowing the birth of new cells and leaving the brain vulnerable to decline. In depression, for example, neurogenesis often stalls, and the world feels narrower, heavier, harder to escape. But when it begins again, whether through therapy, medication, or lifestyle shifts, the fog can lift, as though the mind is rediscovering its capacity to rebuild itself. The truth that your brain grows neurons in adulthood challenges everything we thought we knew about human limits. It whispers of second chances, of renewal at any age, of the terrifying and beautiful fact that your mind is not finished, not final. Even now, as you live and breathe, new cells are quietly joining the story of you. The brain treats love like addiction. Falling in love is not just an emotional experience, it is a neurological takeover. When you're in love, your brain floods with dopamine, the same neurotransmitter that fuels cravings for drugs like cocaine or nicotine. That burst of pleasure makes every glance, every touch, every thought of the person feel electrifying. At the same time, other chemicals, oxytocin, serotonin, and norepinephrine, join in, deepening attachment, heightening focus, and creating that dizzy, obsessive pull you can't escape. What makes this powerful is not only the joy, but the cost. Just like an addict chasing a high, the brain in love craves more time, more connection, more closeness. Separation feels like withdrawal, a hollow ache in the chest that's as real and physical as it is emotional. Studies of brain scans show that the neural pathways activated in people who are in love mirror those of addicts craving their drug. Love, in a biological sense, is not just passion, it is dependency. This truth can feel both beautiful and terrifying. On one hand, it explains the euphoria of new romance, the way the world seems brighter, sharper, more alive. On the other, it reveals why heartbreak is so devastating. When love is lost, the same circuits that lit up with joy crash into despair, leaving you restless, sleepless, and desperate. The craving doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers, clawing at the mind, echoing like withdrawal pains in the body. Love binds us not only through poetry or choice, but through chemistry that enslaves us. The brain does not simply enjoy love, it clings to it, needs it, and suffers without it, making us all, in some way, addicts to each other. The brain uses dopamine to want, not like. Dopamine is often mislabeled as the pleasure chemical, but that is a lie your brain happily lets you believe. In reality, dopamine does not make you like things. It makes you want them. It is the fuel of craving, the restless itch that drives you toward the next goal, the next bite, the next rush. When dopamine spikes, it isn't telling you that you are satisfied. It is telling you that you must chase more. This is why addiction is so merciless. Whether it's drugs, gambling, social media, or even love, the dopamine system locks you into an endless loop of pursuit. You scroll one more time, take one more drink, send one more message, not because it brings deep joy, but because the craving won't let you stop. The brain tricks you into believing fulfillment lies just one step away, yet the liking, the true satisfaction, is often fleeting or absent. Think of how hollow that can feel. The cookie tastes good, but the desire for the next one burns brighter. The like fades, but the want grows stronger. The brain's survival wiring makes sure of it. In the wild, craving was life-saving. It pushed you to hunt, to seek, to explore, never satisfied, never stagnant. But in the modern world, That same wiring enslaves you to glowing screens, substances, and cycles you never truly asked for. The most unsettling truth is that your brain doesn't care if what you want will harm you. Dopamine doesn't judge, it only pulls, and so you chase endlessly, often mistaking wanting for happiness, when in reality your brain never intended them to be the same. The brain clings to negativity. Your brain was never designed to be fair. It was designed to keep you alive. That's why it clings to negative experiences with an iron grip, while letting positive ones slip through like water. From an evolutionary standpoint, remembering danger meant survival. Missing one threat could cost your life, while missing one pleasant moment cost you nothing. So the brain evolved a negativity bias, storing bad experiences with vivid intensity and revisiting them again and again. This is why an insult lingers longer than a compliment, why failure echoes louder than success, and why fear can dominate hope even when the odds are in your favor. The amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm system, lights up more strongly for negative events and signals your memory centers to stamp them in deep. Over time, this bias shapes how you see yourself and the world. One harsh word can erase a dozen kind ones. One betrayal can overshadow years of trust. It's not just psychology, it's biology. Studies show that negative stimuli trigger stronger electrical responses in the brain than positive ones, forcing your attention to focus and your body to react. The result is a mind haunted by shadows, replaying dangers, hurts, and regrets long after they're gone. What makes this haunting is the realization that much of your suffering is not the event itself, but the brain's refusal to let it fade. You can be safe, loved, even successful, and still feel consumed by one memory of loss or pain. Your brain grips it because it believes that's the only way to protect you, even if it means stealing your peace in the process. The brain feels rejection like pain. When someone rejects you, ignores a message, ends a relationship, or excludes you from a group, your brain reacts as though you've been physically injured. Functional MRI scans show that the same neural circuits that process physical pain, particularly in the anterior cingulate cortex, ignite when you experience social rejection. The sting of heartbreak or exclusion isn't just a metaphor. To your brain, it is pain. This is why rejection hurts so much more deeply than logic says it should. A dismissive glance, a breakup text, a cold silence. These are processed not only as emotional wounds, but as survival threats. Evolution wired us this way because belonging once meant life or death. To be excluded from your tribe was to face predators and starvation alone. So when someone pushes you away, your brain sets off alarms meant to ensure you fight to belong again. The emotional weight of this fact is staggering. It means the loneliness you felt after being cast aside, the ache in your chest when someone you love pulls away, is not weakness. It is your biology screaming that connection has been severed. The same circuits that make a cut throb or a burn sear are lighting up, demanding your attention. But here's the haunting twist. Unlike a broken bone, rejection leaves no visible mark. The pain is invisible, easily dismissed by others, even minimized by yourself. Yet your brain registers it as real, raw, and urgent. It explains why rejection can linger, shaping self-esteem, warping confidence, and echoing for years after the moment itself has passed. The brain fires after death. Even in the moments after the heart stops, the brain refuses to go dark right away. For minutes, sometimes longer, neurons continue to fire in bursts of electrical activity, sending waves of energy rippling through neural circuits. In some cases, scientists have recorded powerful surges of brain activity just after death, patterns eerily similar to those seen in states of heightened awareness, like dreaming or even deep meditation. This lingering spark is both fascinating and unsettling. It means that in the thin space between life and nothingness, the brain may still be active, processing, firing, perhaps even creating final fragments of thought or perception. Some theories suggest these surges could explain near-death experiences, those vivid moments when people report seeing lights, feeling peace, or watching their life flash before their eyes. If true, then the last moments of existence are not silence, but an electrical storm hidden inside the skull. The haunting part is that we will never fully know what those final sparks mean. Are they the last desperate attempts of the brain to make sense of fading reality? Are they echoes of memory being released all at once? Or are they simply chaotic noise, the nervous system collapsing as oxygen disappears? Whatever the answer, the fact remains, death does not arrive instantly. Consciousness flickers, neurons fight to keep firing, and in that flickering lies the most mysterious threshold of human existence. The thought chills you. The body may be gone, but the brain keeps whispering, burning through its last reserves, leaving behind a question we may never be able to silence. What does the mind see in its final fire? The brain runs on approximately 3.5 watts. For all its mystery, for all its complexity, the human brain runs on less power than a dim light bulb, about 3.5 watts. That's enough to keep your entire reality alive. Your thoughts, your memories, your fears, your imagination, every decision you make, every heartbeat it regulates, all of it powered by the same energy it takes to keep a small LED glowing. This fact is almost unbearable to think about. The brain is the most advanced machine in the known universe, yet it survives on scraps of energy, converting glucose and oxygen into electrical storms that define your existence. Every word you speak, every flash of inspiration, every rush of love is happening inside that faint current. It's fragile and unstoppable all at once. And here's the chilling part. Starve the brain of that energy for even minutes, and it begins to collapse. Neurons flicker out, connections sever, entire memories vanish. A blackout of power in your skull doesn't just stop function, it erases you. Yet in its efficiency lies its power. Supercomputers that try to mimic the brain consume megawatts of electricity, yet they still fail to match its seamless grace. The brain, tucked inside your skull, quietly outperforms them all on a fraction of the energy. It's humbling and haunting to realize that the you reading these words, the you who laughs, who suffers, who dreams, is nothing more than 3.5 watts of electricity flowing through fragile tissue. Your entire world flickers on a spark that's small, a reminder of just how delicate the line between awareness and silence really is. The brain reshapes with learning. Every time you learn something new, your brain physically changes. It is not a metaphor. It is rewiring itself at the cellular level. New synapses, the tiny connections between neurons, sprout and strengthen when you practice, while unused ones wither away. The architecture of your mind is sculpted by experience, reshaped with every book you read, every skill you practice, every conversation you have. You are not the same person today as you were yesterday, because the act of learning has already altered your brain. This process, called neuroplasticity, is both beautiful and terrifying. It means your brain is never fixed. It's a living, shifting map that bends to the patterns of your life. When you study, you lay down roads that make future learning easier. When you repeat harmful habits, you carve ruts that trap you in cycles of thought and behavior. Learning doesn't just expand knowledge, it molds the brain into the shape of your choices. The emotional weight of this truth is staggering. It means that change is always possible. No matter your age, no matter your past, your brain can rewire itself. A stroke survivor can relearn speech. A child neglected in silence can bloom when exposed to language. A broken mind can be retrained, step by painful step, into clarity. But it also means you are vulnerable. What you consume, what you practice, who you surround yourself with, all of it leaves fingerprints on your brain. Every repetition deepens the grooves. Your mind is clay, always being molded, and you are never untouched by what you feed it. The brain inherits trauma epigenetically. Trauma does not always die with the person who experiences it. The brain can carry scars of pain, fear, and survival into the next generation through a process called epigenetics. Unlike genetic mutations, which alter the DNA sequence itself, epigenetic changes are chemical tags placed on DNA, turning certain genes on or off. Stress, war, abuse, or famine can leave these tags on brain-related genes, altering the way they function, and shockingly, those changes can be passed down to children and even grandchildren. This means that the nightmares of one generation can live on in the next. Studies of Holocaust survivors, descendants of war refugees, and even children born after natural disasters show patterns of heightened anxiety, depression, and hypervigilance. Their brains are wired to sense threat, to live in a world that may not be dangerous anymore, but feels dangerous because their very biology is carrying echoes of the past. The emotional weight of this truth is devastating. It means the sadness you sometimes can't explain, the fear you never earned, the weight you feel in silence might not belong entirely to you. It might be the echo of your mother's suffering, your grandfather's terror, your ancestors' survival strategies etched into your brain chemistry. Your mind could be haunted not only by your own experiences, but by pain you never lived through. And yet, the same mechanism that transmits trauma also carries resilience. Just as fear can be passed down, so can strength, adaptation, and survival. The brain's ability to inherit trauma is a chilling reminder that we carry more than just our own story. We carry the unfinished wounds and unspoken endurance of those who came before us. The brain prunes abnormally in schizophrenia. During adolescence and early adulthood, the brain naturally prunes itself, trimming away excess synaptic connections the way a gardener cuts back branches. This pruning is crucial. It strengthens the most useful pathways, making thought and perception more efficient. But in schizophrenia, this process goes tragically wrong. Instead of fine-tuning, the brain prunes too much, cutting away vital connections, leaving behind a network that is thinned, fragile, and disrupted. The emotional weight of this fact is devastating. It means that the very organ meant to sharpen itself during growth may betray its owner, stripping away the scaffolding of thought, memory, and perception. A young person may enter adulthood with their brain literally dismantling itself from within, carving away the bridges that tether them to reality. What should be a time of blooming independence and identity becomes a collapse of trust in one's own mind. Brain scans show that people with schizophrenia often lose gray matter at an accelerated rate, particularly in regions tied to thinking, decision-making, and perception. This abnormal pruning may explain why voices are heard where none exist, why reality fractures into paranoia, why clarity turns into chaos. The illness is not simply madness, it is the silent erosion of the brain's architecture, an invisible decay of connections that leaves the sufferer haunted by their own mind. To know this is to feel the tragedy more deeply. Schizophrenia is not weakness, not failure, not something chosen. It is the brutal betrayal of the brain itself, cutting away too much until the self it once carried becomes fragmented, fragile, and forever changed. The brain hallucinates like reality. When the brain hallucinates, it doesn't create ghostly, faded shadows. It produces experiences that are neurologically identical to real perception. The same circuits that light up when you see, hear, or feel something in the outside world are activated during a hallucination. To the brain, the line between reality and illusion doesn't exist. This is why a person who hears voices or sees visions is not imagining them in the weak sense. They are experiencing them with the full weight of their sensory systems. What makes this so haunting is that the brain can deceive itself with absolute conviction. A hallucination isn't recognized as false by the one who lives it. To that person, the voice whispering in the dark is as real as your own voice reading these words in your mind. The sound exists not in the air, but inside their neural pathways, indistinguishable from the truth, and the triggers are endless. Sleep deprivation, trauma, psychedelics, fever, or psychiatric illness can all unlock this terrifying capacity. Soldiers in war zones have reported phantom companions guiding them through chaos. Isolated explorers hear footsteps in the silence of the Arctic. Even healthy people, deprived of sensory input, quickly begin to hallucinate, their brains filling the void with invented reality. The emotional weight of this is staggering. The very organ you rely on to define reality is capable of fabricating it wholesale. It makes you question not only the experiences of those who hallucinate, but your own grip on the world. If the same brain that shows you truth can also conjure lies that feel identical, how can you ever be certain that what you're perceiving right now is the real thing? The brain's cerebellum handles emotions. The cerebellum is often called the little brain, tucked neatly at the back of your skull, long believed to be nothing more than a coordinator of movement and balance. But science has revealed a far darker and more fascinating truth. The cerebellum is not just about controlling your body, it is entangled with your emotions, silently influencing how you feel, react, and even how you process joy and despair. For decades, this connection was overlooked, but patients with cerebellar damage often show more than clumsiness. They display flattened emotions, bursts of irrational anger, or overwhelming anxiety. The little brain, it seems, is not silent in the theater of feeling. It's a backstage director, fine-tuning the intensity of your inner world. When its circuits misfire, you may not just stumble physically, you may stumble emotionally too. Think about how chilling this is. An area once dismissed as a mechanical gear for movement can quietly shape your moods, your resilience, your to cope with pain or loss. When you laugh, when you weep, when your chest tightens from fear, the cerebellum is whispering in the background, ensuring that the storm or the calm feels as real as it does. And the unsettling part is that you never sense its hand. You may believe your emotions come solely from the heart or the higher reasoning parts of the brain, but deep in the shadows, the cerebellum is pulling invisible strings. It means your ability to feel alive, to connect, to break down, may rest in the hands of the brain's most underestimated structure, one you rarely think about, but one that silently holds sway over your emotional life. The brain creates phantom limbs. When a limb is lost, the brain doesn't immediately erase it from its map of the body. Instead, the missing arm or leg continues to live inside the brain's wiring, and this ghostly presence is often felt as a phantom limb. People describe itching in fingers that no longer exist, pain in a foot that has been amputated, or even the ability to move a hand that is no longer there. These sensations are not imagined. They are the result of the brain struggling to reconcile reality with its own blueprint of the body. The somatosensory cortex, the part of the brain that registers touch and body position, doesn't simply vanish when the limb is gone. It continues to fire as though the missing part is still attached. Neighboring regions begin to invade the silent space left behind, rewiring the body map in ways that blur boundaries. This is why touching the face of an amputee can sometimes make them feel a phantom touch in their absent arm. The brain refuses to accept the loss, desperately filling in gaps to maintain the illusion of wholeness. The emotional weight of phantom limbs is chilling. Imagine being haunted not by a memory, but by a piece of your body that exists only in your brain's stubborn insistence that it should still be there. The pain can be unbearable, a cruel trick of neurons firing signals from nowhere. And yet, this phenomenon also reveals the brain's incredible adaptability. The same plasticity that causes phantom pain can be harnessed to ease it. with mirror therapy and visualization teaching the brain to redraw its own map. The phantom limb is proof that the body lives twice, once in flesh and once as a fragile yet unshakable construct inside the brain. The brain slows IQ with multitasking. The brain is designed to focus, to lock onto one stream of thought or action at a time. When you force it to multitask, it doesn't truly juggle tasks at once. It switches frantically between them. Each switch drains mental resources, interrupts memory consolidation, and scatters attention. Studies show that people who multitask consistently perform worse on tests of focus and memory, and their effective IQ can drop by as much as 10 to 15 points while juggling tasks. It's not efficiency, it's self-sabotage disguised as productivity. The emotional sting of this fact comes from how it exposes a hidden lie. In a world that glorifies multitasking, that rewards hustle and constant busyness, the truth is that every time you check your phone mid-conversation or answer emails while on a call, you're not being more capable. You're actually less intelligent in that moment than you were before. The brain pays a steep toll for the illusion of speed, and the cost is clarity, memory, and creativity. This has real consequences: forgetting critical details in work, missing emotional cues in relationships, or dulling the spark of ideas that needed uninterrupted time to grow. Worse still, chronic multitasking rewires the brain, making it harder to concentrate deeply even when you try. Over time, the brain grows addicted to distraction, always seeking the next ping, the next task, the next fragment of stimulation, while true focus, the kind that builds mastery and meaning, slips further away. The harsh truth is that multitasking doesn't make you sharper. It leaves you scattered, slower and dimmer than you realize, as your brain strains under a weight it was never built to carry. The brain can form false memories artificially. The brain is not a flawless recorder of events. It is vulnerable to suggestion, and entire memories can be manufactured without ever having happened. In psychological experiments, scientists have implanted false memories into volunteers with alarming ease. By using subtle suggestion, leading questions, or staged cues, participants came to believe they had been lost in a mall as a child, met Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, or even committed acts they never actually did. What's most chilling is that these false memories feel just as vivid, emotional, and real as true ones. This happens because memory is reconstructive, not reproductive. Each time we recall, the brain pulls fragments from different regions and reassembles them. If outside information is introduced during this process, a suggestion, an image, even an emotion, the brain weaves it in seamlessly. Over time, it fuses into the narrative of your life, indistinguishable from genuine experience. You could swear under oath it happened, yet it's nothing more than a trick of neural wiring. The emotional weight of this fact is staggering. Your most cherished moments, your deepest traumas, your sense of who you are, all of it is vulnerable to distortion. A single seed planted by someone else, even with innocent intent, can bloom into a false chapter of your identity. Entire relationships have been built or broken on memories that never existed. The haunting truth is that reality inside your mind is negotiable. What you are certain of today could unravel tomorrow, exposed as fiction shaped by suggestion. If the brain can so easily be convinced of events that never happened, how much of the story you call your life can you really trust? The brain declines long before Alzheimer's shows. Alzheimer's doesn't arrive suddenly. It creeps in silently, sometimes decades before the first symptom ever appears, long before memory begins to slip, before names get lost or faces blur. The brain is already under siege. Proteins like beta amyloid and tau start to misfold and build up, clogging the delicate networks that carry thought and memory. Neurons begin to die quietly, one by one, while the person still lives their life unaware, laughing, working, loving, believing they are safe. This hidden decline is cruel because it is invisible. The brain does not sound an alarm when its connections begin to unravel. Instead, it adapts, rerouting signals, compensating for losses, covering its tracks so well that years pass before the damage finally shows itself. By the time forgetfulness becomes noticeable, the disease has already carved deep wounds into the brain's architecture. It's haunting to realize that Alzheimer's is not a sudden thief, but a patient one, dismantling your identity piece by piece long before you feel the first tremor of confusion. Someone can appear sharp, articulate, even brilliant, while deep inside their neurons are collapsing into silence. This truth forces a chilling reflection. How much of who you are today may already be slipping away in ways you cannot see? The mind that feels whole, confident, alive may already be carrying seeds of loss planted years earlier. Alzheimer's doesn't wait for old age. It stalks from the shadows long before, reshaping the future of your memories while you remain unaware, believing your brain is still entirely yours. The brain resists change. The brain's greatest strength, its ability to create efficient pathways, is also its greatest weakness. Once a pattern is established, whether it's a habit, a belief, or a way of reacting, the brain clings to it with startling persistence. This resistance to change isn't laziness, it's survival. The brain is wired to conserve energy, and building new neural connections requires effort, glucose, and time. To the brain, the familiar feels safe, even when it's destructive. This is why people return to toxic relationships, repeat unhealthy behaviors, or stay locked in cycles of fear. It's not because they want to suffer, but because their brain has carved grooves of expectation so deep that deviation feels like danger. To the subconscious mind, change is uncertainty, and uncertainty is a threat. So the brain resists, pulling you back toward the comfort of the known, no matter how much it hurts. What makes this truth so emotionally heavy is how it explains the silent wars we fight within ourselves. The decision to quit an addiction, to heal from trauma, or to step into a new life is not just a matter of willpower. It is a battle against a brain that whispers, stay where it's safe. Even positive change, falling in love, chasing dreams, breaking free, can trigger panic because the brain cannot yet predict the outcome. And yet, the very plasticity that makes resistance so powerful also holds the key. With repetition, persistence, and sometimes sheer desperation, the brain can be rewired, but the journey feels like tearing away pieces of yourself, because in a way, it is the dismantling of old neural maps to make room for the unknown. The brain blocks sleep signals with caffeine. Caffeine doesn't give you energy, it steals it. Deep inside your brain, a chemical called adenosine builds up throughout the day, binding to receptors that make you feel drowsy and gently pushing you toward rest. It's your body's natural signal that it's time to recover, time to sleep, time to heal. But when you drink caffeine, it slips into those receptors like a thief in disguise, blocking adenosine from delivering its message. The result? You feel alert, awake, even invincible, but it's a lie. The sleepiness is still there, only silence. This is why the crash hits so hard. As the caffeine wears off, the blocked adenosine rushes back in with full force, overwhelming you in a wave of exhaustion. Your brain wasn't recharged, it was only muted. What's worse, caffeine lingers in your system for hours, sometimes up to half a day, quietly sabotaging your ability to reach the deep, restorative sleep your brain needs to cleanse itself and lock in memories. You may fall asleep, but the quality of that sleep is fractured, shallow, and far less healing. Emotionally, the truth cuts deeper. Many people live their lives chained to caffeine, thinking it fuels their productivity, when in reality, it's a cycle of borrowing tomorrow's energy to survive today. The brain suffers quietly in the background, struggling to perform under constant chemical interference. And while a cup of coffee feels harmless, the hidden cost is mounting: disrupted sleep, fragile focus, anxious racing thoughts, and a body that never truly rests. Caffeine doesn't create energy, it hijacks your brain's voice, masking exhaustion until your mind can no longer ignore it. The brain rewires with new languages. Learning a new language does more than add words to your vocabulary. It physically reshapes the brain. Each new sound, grammar rule, and phrase forces the brain to forge fresh neural pathways, strengthening the connections between regions responsible for memory, attention, and problem solving. MRI scans reveal that bilingual and multilingual individuals often have denser gray matter in areas tied to language processing, as well as stronger white matter connections that improve communication between hemispheres. But this transformation is more than structural, it's deeply emotional. To learn a language is to alter the way you perceive the world. Words shape thought, and when your brain rewires to hold new ones, it also learns new ways to categorize feelings, colors, time, and even relationships. For example, some languages lack direct words for certain emotions, while others have unique terms for experiences English cannot capture. To carry a new language is to carry a new lens on reality, and your brain adapts accordingly. This rewiring also brings resilience. Studies show that speaking multiple languages delays the onset of dementia and cognitive decline, giving the brain a buffer against aging. It's as if every new word becomes another thread in a safety net protecting memory and identity. Yet, there is something haunting about it too. Every language you learn changes who you are. Subtly, invisibly, the brain you were yesterday is not the same today. Your inner voice shifts, your instincts bend, your sense of self stretches across different vocabularies. The truth is that your brain does not just store languages, it becomes them, rewiring itself so profoundly that you will never see the world in quite the same way again. The brain densifies with bilingualism. Learning and speaking more than one language doesn't just expand communication, it reshapes the brain itself. Studies using brain imaging have revealed that bilingual individuals actually develop denser gray matter, especially in regions tied to memory, attention, and executive control. The effort of switching between languages, of holding one while speaking another, forces the brain to build stronger, more complex networks. Every time a bilingual person chooses a word, resists interference from the other language, or navigates meaning across cultures, the brain is training like an athlete, layering new strength into its very structure. This densification is more than biology. It's a hidden form of resilience. Bilingual brains have been shown to delay the onset of dementia by years, giving people more time before memory decline takes hold. They also demonstrate sharper problem-solving skills, greater cognitive flexibility, and the ability to adapt to change with ease. To live with two languages is to constantly stretch the mind, and the brain responds by hardening those pathways, like a blacksmith hammering steel. But there is also something profoundly moving about this fact. It means that every word spoken in a second tongue, every imperfect conversation, every struggle to recall vocabulary is carving strength into the brain itself. Even the frustration of learning, the stumbles and mistakes are part of a silent rewiring that makes the mind more resilient, more enduring. To be bilingual is not just to carry two languages, it is to carry a stronger brain, one that has been densified by effort, challenge, and survival, silently protecting your future self from decline. The brain can dream lucidly. Most dreams sweep you into their strange worlds without question, leaving you powerless to control what unfolds. But in a lucid dream, the brain does something extraordinary. It wakes up inside the dream. You suddenly realize that the world around you isn't real, that you are dreaming. And with that awareness comes the power to shape the dream itself. Fly, change scenery, summon people long gone. The possibilities feel limitless because your brain is writing the script in real time. This state happens when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain tied to self-awareness and logic, flickers back online while the rest of the brain stays in the immersive theater of REM sleep. It's a rare merging of consciousness and unconsciousness, a fragile balance where you can both live the dream and direct it. Scientists have even communicated with lucid dreamers in real time, watching them respond with eye movements while still asleep. The emotional pull of lucid dreaming is profound. Imagine meeting someone you've lost, walking through a memory you thought was gone, or creating worlds where fear has no power over you. For some, lucid dreams are escapes into paradise. For others, they are weapons against nightmares, a chance to stand up to terrors that once left them helpless. And yet, there's something haunting about it. If the brain can grant us realities as vivid as waking life, how can we ever be sure we're not dreaming now? Lucid dreams blur the line between what is real and what is imagined, reminding us that reality itself is just a fragile construct inside the brain. The brain roots smell directly to memory. Unlike sight or sound, which must first be processed through complex relay stations in the brain, smell takes a shortcut. When an odor enters your nose, it binds to receptors that send signals straight to the olfactory bulb, just one synapse away from the amygdala and hippocampus, the centers of emotion and memory. This direct pathway is why scents can unleash floods of memories with terrifying speed, transporting you back years in an instant. The experience is almost haunting. A whiff of perfume can resurrect the ghost of a lost love. The smell of old books can return you to childhood classrooms. The scent of rain on concrete can pull you back to a summer day long gone. These moments feel involuntary, as though the brain has unlocked a door you didn't know was still inside you. Unlike photographs or songs that trigger recollections gradually, smells erupt with vivid emotional intensity, bypassing rational filters and striking straight at the core of who you were. What makes this fact so emotionally gripping is that it shows how fragile the line between past and present really is. A single molecule drifting in the air can collapse time, collapsing decades into seconds, blurring the boundary between memory and reality. The brain does not ask permission. It floods you with feelings you thought you had forgotten, often so powerfully it feels like reliving the past itself. Smell is the most primal of senses, and its direct link to memory means the brain can keep your history alive in the most unexpected ways, ambushing you with echoes of who you used to be. The brain restores speech with music. For people who have lost the ability to speak after a stroke, brain injury, or neurological disorder, music can awaken something that words alone cannot. The act of singing bypasses damaged language centers and taps into alternate neural networks, allowing patients to produce words and phrases through melody when ordinary speech has been silenced. In music therapy sessions, a patient who cannot string together a sentence may suddenly be able to sing an entire line, their brain unlocking language hidden inside rhythm and tune. This happens because music activates far more than the speech centers. It engages memory, motor control, emotion, and auditory processing all at once. When a person sings, the right hemisphere, often spared in left brain injuries that affect language, steps in to carry the load. Over time, this stimulation doesn't just allow singing, it can retrain the brain to rebuild spoken language itself. In essence, the song becomes the bridge back to speech. The emotional impact of this is staggering. Imagine a loved one locked in silence, their words stripped away by a stroke. Then, through music, they begin to hum, to sing, to form sounds that grow into words again. It feels like watching identity return piece by piece, like seeing the light come back into someone's eyes. Music does more than heal. It resurrects connection, restoring voices thought to be lost forever. The haunting beauty of this truth is that language and music are inseparable in the brain. Where words fail, melody reaches, and sometimes it is in a simple song that the brain rediscovers the voice of the soul. The brain matures fully around 25. The human brain is not finished when you turn 18, despite what society tells you. Deep within the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for judgment, impulse control, planning, and long-term decision-making, the final connections are still being wired well into your mid-20s. It is only around the age of 25 that the brain reaches full maturity, solidifying the circuits that allow you to weigh risks, regulate emotions, and think with clarity about the future. This unfinished wiring is why adolescence and early adulthood often feel like chaos, why impulsive choices, emotional storms, and reckless risks are so common. The brain during this stage is powerful in creativity, passion, and raw emotion, but fragile when it comes to restraint. It craves stimulation and novelty, yet lacks the brakes to slow itself down. The young brain is a firework, dazzling, explosive, but dangerously unpredictable. What makes this fact so emotionally piercing is what it reveals about identity. The you think you are at 18 or even 21 is not yet complete. Your brain is still under construction, silently shaping the person you will become. This means the choices made in youth, the habits formed, the traumas endured, the risks taken, etch themselves into a structure that isn't fully built yet, leaving permanent marks. And yet, there is beauty in this delay. It means that transformation is still possible, that you are not fixed in who you are when the world first demands adulthood from you. By 25, the brain finally seals its architecture, carrying forward the lessons, scars, and dreams of youth into the enduring shape of your adult self. The brain suffers from inflammation. When the brain becomes inflamed, it doesn't ache like a swollen joint or redden like an infected wound. It wages a silent war inside your skull. Inflammation in the brain is triggered when its immune cells, called microglia, shift into overdrive. Meant to protect you from infection and injury, they release chemicals that, when uncontrolled, begin to damage neurons instead. This hidden fire spreads slowly, disrupting communication between cells, warping mood, and eroding memory. The haunting part is how quietly it happens. Brain inflammation is linked to depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even strokes. People suffering from it often don't know why they feel heavy, foggy, or detached. It's their brain itself under siege. Unlike a fever or a sore throat, the brain rarely tells you directly when inflammation is consuming it. The first signs are subtle: fatigue that doesn't fade, emotions that swing violently, thoughts that feel slower, clarity that slips away. This truth is terrifying because it shows how much of our mind's stability can be stolen without warning. The very cells designed to shield you can turn into destroyers, reshaping who you are one flare at a time. Trauma, chronic stress, toxins, infections, even poor sleep can all fan the flames, leaving your brain vulnerable. And yet, the same system that can break you is also your salvation. When balanced, microglia repair, protect, and nurture the mind. But when balance tips, they can unravel identity itself, leaving you trapped in a fog of your own body's making. The brain, built to protect, can become the source of its own destruction. The brain's intelligence equals wiring efficiency. Raw brain size doesn't make a person intelligent. Efficiency does. What sets sharper minds apart is how quickly and effectively their neurons communicate. Inside your skull, billions of neurons are connected by trillions of synapses. But it isn't the sheer number that matters most. It's the architecture. In highly efficient brains, information travels along shorter, faster, and more direct routes, like an optimized highway system. This allows ideas to form quicker, patterns to be recognized faster, and solutions to emerge with less wasted energy. This is why two people can study the same subject, but one absorbs it effortlessly while the other struggles. It's not that the second brain is broken, it's that its wiring requires more detours, more energy, more time to complete the same task. Efficient wiring doesn't just make you smarter, it conserves energy. Remember, the brain already devours about 20% of the body's fuel. A well-wired brain spends less of it, leaving more resources for creativity, focus, and resilience under pressure. The emotional weight of this fact lies in its invisibility. You cannot see the elegance or chaos of your wiring, yet it silently defines how easily you learn, how deeply you think, how quickly you adapt. Trauma, disease, or even stress can tangle these circuits, making intelligence feel dimmed, not because you lost knowledge, but because the paths to it became clogged. Conversely, training, meditation, and practice can sharpen those pathways, making the brain not just smarter, but smoother, faster, more alive. Your intelligence isn't locked in your neurons' number. It's hidden in the invisible efficiency of their connections, the quiet dance of signals flowing like lightning across your mind. The brain forgets to prevent overload. Forgetting often feels like failure, lost names, misplaced keys, fading memories that once felt permanent. But the brain forgets for a reason, and it is not weakness, it is protection. Every second of your life, billions of sensory inputs flood your mind. If the brain held on to all of them, you would be paralyzed under the weight of endless detail. Forgetting is the filter, the survival tool, the way the mind clears space to focus on what truly matters. Scientists have discovered that forgetting isn't passive decay, it's active pruning. Neural connections weaken and fade, not because they are broken, but because your brain deliberately lets them go. This prevents overload, keeps the mind flexible, and allows you to adapt to new environments. Forgetting makes room for learning. It clears away clutter so that focus and creativity can thrive. But here's the haunting truth. The brain doesn't always distinguish between what you choose to keep and what it erases. A childhood laugh, a parent's voice, a first love's touch. Precious memories can vanish just as easily as irrelevant ones. Forgetting protects you, but it also robs you, reshaping your identity without your consent. And yet, without this forgetting, you would drown in the noise of a million trivial details, unable to separate the meaningful from the meaningless. The brain protects you by erasing pieces of your own story, ensuring you can keep moving forward, even if it means sacrificing fragments of who you once were. The brain shrinks under stress. Stress does not just weigh on your heart or tense your muscles, it physically reshapes your brain. When stress becomes chronic, the flood of cortisol, the body's main stress hormone, begins to damage neurons in the hippocampus, the very region responsible for memory and learning. Under its constant assault, dendrites, the delicate branches that connect neurons, begin to shrivel, and over time, the hippocampus itself can shrink. This is why prolonged stress makes concentration harder, memory weaker, and learning feel like wading through fog. The same hormone that once helped your ancestors survive danger by sharpening reflexes now erodes the very organ that defines who you are. Worse, stress doesn't confine its damage to memory alone. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control, also loses volume under unrelenting pressure, leaving you less able to focus, less patient, and more prone to emotional outbursts. The emotional weight of this truth is staggering. Stress doesn't just make you feel smaller inside, it literally makes your brain smaller. People consumed by worry, trapped in toxic environments, or living with constant fear may unknowingly be losing parts of their mental strength piece by piece. It is a hidden theft, stealing not only peace of mind, but the very capacity to remember, to plan, to hope. What makes it even more haunting is that the brain remembers the stress long after the moment has passed. Neural scars remain, altering the way you respond to challenges in the future, leaving you quicker to break, slower to recover. Stress doesn't just pass through you, it leaves marks that change the very shape of your mind. The brain predicts future events. The brain is not waiting passively for the world to happen. It is constantly trying to stay one step ahead. Every movement you make, every sound you hear, every image you see is filtered through predictions your brain makes about what should come next. Neuroscientists call this predictive coding. Instead of just reacting to the present, your brain creates models of the future and uses sensory input only to correct its guesses. This is why you can catch a ball before it lands, finish someone's sentence, or hear a word clearly even when noise drowns half of it out. The brain fills in gaps, anticipating reality faster than your senses alone could ever process it. Without this predictive engine, life would feel jagged, delayed, and unlivable. Every step you take relies on it. You don't consciously calculate balance, you just move, because your brain already predicted how your body should shift. But this gift comes with shadows. When the brain predicts danger, even without evidence, anxiety surges. When it predicts betrayal, trust crumbles before anything has actually happened. The same circuits that keep you alive can also trap you in cycles of fear or despair, making you live in futures that never arrive. And here's the haunting part. Reality, for you, is never the raw present. It is always filtered through what your brain expects. Your joys, your heartbreaks, your decisions are shaped not only by what you sense, but by what your brain believes is coming. In every moment, you are living inside a fragile balance between memory, perception, and prediction, a story written milliseconds before you even know it. The brain can recall every detail in rare cases. In the vast ocean of memory, most of us float along with fragments, faces half remembered, days blurred, details slipping away as time erodes them. But for a rare few, the brain becomes a vault that refuses to let anything go. This condition, known as highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, allows individuals to recall almost every day of their lives with unnerving clarity. Ask them what they were doing on a random Tuesday 15 years ago, and they can tell you the weather, the clothes they wore, the mood they felt, and even what song was playing on the radio. At first, this might sound like a gift, a superpower that grants life-perfect recall. But in truth, it can be both wondrous and unbearable. These individuals cannot escape their past. Every heartbreak, every embarrassment, every moment of grief comes back with the same intensity it had when it was first lived. While most brains protect us by blurring edges and dulling pain, theirs reopens wounds with merciless accuracy. Memories that should fade into the distance remain sharp, refusing to soften with time. This phenomenon reveals something haunting about the brain. Forgetting is not weakness, but survival. The ability to forget frees us from drowning in the weight of every detail, allowing us to live in the present without being chained to the past. For those with HSAM, memory is both a blessing and a curse, proof that the brain can preserve everything, but also a reminder that sometimes mercy lies in letting things go. The brain's power to remember every detail shows us just how fragile the boundary is between gift and torment, between clarity and captivity. The brain uses both hemispheres for creativity. For decades, the myth of the right-brained creative versus the left-brained logical person has shaped how we think about intelligence. But neuroscience paints a far more fascinating and unsettling picture. Creativity is not the work of one hemisphere alone, but the seamless collaboration of both. The left brain's analytical structure and the right brain's imaginative flow weave together like threads, producing the sparks of originality that define human innovation. When you compose music, solve a problem, or paint a vision that's never been seen, your brain is engaging in a dialogue between hemispheres. the left provides order, sequence, and logic, while the right injects imagery, emotion, and association. Creativity emerges not from isolation, but from their union. Damage to one side doesn't simply cut off half of your skills, it disrupts this fragile balance, dulling the fire of imagination or crippling the ability to give form to it. The emotional weight of this truth is profound. Creativity isn't magic. It's your brain tearing down walls between two worlds inside you. Every breakthrough, every moment of inspiration is born from this hidden marriage of opposites, and it means the potential for creation lies in everyone, not in being right-brained or left-brained, but in learning to let the hemispheres dance together. Yet there's a haunting vulnerability too. Stroke, trauma, or degeneration in one hemisphere can silence not just function, but expression, leaving ideas trapped, brilliance unspoken. It reminds us that creativity is fragile, balance on a tightrope stretched between two halves of the mind, and that the loss of either side can dim the light of imagination forever. The brain rewires harmfully in isolation. Human beings are wired for connection, and the brain suffers when deprived of it. In prolonged isolation, neural pathways begin to change in ways that are anything but protective. The regions that process reward and social interaction grow quieter, while circuits linked to stress and fear grow louder. The brain, starved of meaningful human contact, begins to adapt to loneliness as if it were a permanent state, reshaping itself to survive in solitude, but at the cost of mental health. This rewiring shows itself in chilling ways. Memory and attention start to slip, emotions grow unstable, and anxiety creeps in where calm once lived. Studies of prisoners in solitary confinement reveal that the brain can become hypersensitive to threat, creating paranoia and hallucinations, while blunting the ability to feel joy. Even outside prison walls, social isolation has been shown to mimic the brain changes seen in chronic stress and depression, as though the mind itself cannot bear the silence of being alone. The emotional impact is profound. The very organ that makes you capable of love and belonging betrays you in isolation, reinforcing feelings of emptiness by eroding the circuits that once sought connection. It becomes a vicious loop. The lonelier you are, the harder it becomes to reach out, because your brain is literally rewired to expect rejection, to focus on threat, to withdraw further into itself. What makes this so haunting is that isolation doesn't just hurt your feelings. It changes who you are at the deepest level, reshaping your thoughts, your emotions, even your sense of reality. The brain needs others to stay whole, and without them, it begins to collapse inward, turning connection into a fading memory. The brain crosswires senses in synesthesia. In rare minds, the boundaries between senses blur, and the brain begins to weave experiences together in ways most people can't imagine. This phenomenon is called synesthesia. For those who have it, sounds might have colors, words might taste like metal or honey, numbers may appear with textures, and music might shimmer in patterns of light. To the synesthetic brain, reality is richer, layered, and often overwhelming. Every stimulus opens a doorway into another sensory world. The cause lies in the brain's wiring. Normally, sensory regions work in parallel but remain separate. Vision in the occipital lobe, sound in the temporal lobe, touch in the parietal lobe. In synesthesia, those borders soften. Neural pathways cross over, letting one sense bleed into another. Instead of hearing just a melody, the brain activates the visual cortex, painting the sound in bursts of color. Instead of reading plain text, letters glow with shades, personalities, or even emotions that feel as real as their shapes. For people living with synesthesia, it can be enchanting or exhausting. Imagine tasting bitterness every time you see the number 3, or feeling velvet whenever someone whispers your name. Some synesthetes embrace it as a gift, a lens that transforms ordinary perception into art and meaning. Others struggle with sensory overload, trapped in associations they never chose and cannot silence. What makes this haunting is the realization that reality itself is not fixed. It is interpreted. Your world may be muted compared to someone else's. Your normal, just one version of what the brain can create. Synesthesia reveals how fragile and malleable perception really is, and how many secret universes might exist inside the minds of others. The brain rewires with PTSD. When trauma strikes with overwhelming force, the brain does not simply record it, it reshapes itself around it. In post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive, constantly scanning for threats even in safe environments. At the same time, the hippocampus, which helps distinguish past from present, often shrinks, leaving the brain unable to properly file the memory as over. This means the traumatic event is never truly placed in the past. It lives on, raw and alive, intruding into the present with flashbacks, nightmares, and hypervigilance. This rewiring is not just psychological, it's physical. Neural pathways strengthen around fear responses, making them fire faster and more automatically, while connections for calm reasoning weaken. Everyday sounds, smells, or sights can ignite the same terror as the original trauma because the brain has wired itself to treat the world as hostile. The body follows suit, pumping out adrenaline, raising heart rate, preparing to fight or flee, even when there is no real danger. The emotional devastation of this truth is that trauma does not end when the event ends. The brain carries it forward, reshaping itself into a prison where the past bleeds into the present. People with PTSD are not reliving memories by choice. Their brains are forcing them to. And yet, the same neuroplasticity that locks trauma in place also offers hope. Just as the brain rewired itself to survive horror, with therapy, safety, and time, it can rewire again, building new connections, calming the overactive circuits, and teaching the hippocampus to place the memory back where it belongs. But the scars remain, silent proof that trauma is not just something you remember, it's something that rewrites the very architecture of who you are. The brain size doesn't equal smarts. It's tempting to believe that a bigger brain means a smarter mind, but the truth is far more unsettling. Brain size alone has little to do with intelligence. Some animals, like elephants and whales, have brains many times larger than ours, yet they do not outthink us. Even among humans, history is filled with geniuses whose brains were smaller than average, and ordinary people with large brains who never displayed extraordinary intellect. What truly matters is not the sheer bulk of brain tissue, but the density and efficiency of its connections. Intelligence lives in the folds, in the wiring, in how swiftly and effectively neurons communicate. A smaller brain packed with tightly woven networks can outperform a larger one riddled with wasted space. This means your brilliance depends less on size and more on structure, energy use, and the fluidity of plasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself. The emotional sting of this truth is that intelligence is fragile. A brain can be large but inefficient, or small yet remarkable. Size does not protect against decline, nor does it guarantee potential. What makes you you, your creativity, your insight, your wit, depends on delicate patterns that can be strengthened or broken over time. It is humbling to realize that intelligence is not a matter of physical grandeur, but of invisible design. The very thing that gives rise to thought, art, and love rests not in size, but in the hidden networks firing silently inside your skull. Networks so fragile they can be reshaped by experience, strengthened by learning, or destroyed in an instant. The brain activates practice through imagination. The brain does not fully distinguish between doing something and vividly imagining doing it. When you mentally rehearse a skill playing piano, shooting a basketball, delivering a speech. The same neural circuits light up as if you were physically practicing. Neurons fire in familiar patterns, synapses strengthen, and connections grow, even though your muscles never moved. This is why visualization is so powerful. The brain treats imagined practice as real, quietly sharpening your abilities in the shadows of thought. The implications are haunting and inspiring at the same time. Athletes who visualize their routines perform measurably better. Musicians who mentally rehearse complex pieces improve as if they had physically practiced. Stroke survivors who imagine moving paralyzed limbs stimulate motor regions that prepare them for eventual recovery. The brain doesn't wait for the body. It forges pathways in anticipation, building skill in silence. But the darker side of this truth is just as profound. The same mechanism that builds strength through positive rehearsal can also reinforce weakness through negative imagination. If you constantly picture yourself failing, freezing, or being rejected, your brain strengthens those pathways too. In other words, your private rehearsals, whether of success or of failure, are sculpting your future self. This makes imagination both a gift and a danger. Every mental replay, every scenario you run in your head is practice for reality. Your brain is always listening, always wiring itself according to the world you picture most vividly. And without realizing it, you may already be training yourself for the life you fear or the life you dream of. The brain trusts and biases with oxytocin. Oxytocin is often called the love hormone, the chemical of bonding and trust. It surges when a mother holds her newborn, when lovers embrace, or when friends share a moment of connection. It makes the brain soften its guard, lowering fear, opening doors to intimacy, and convincing you that the person in front of you is safe. To the brain, oxytocin is the invisible glue that ties you to others, ensuring survival through connection. But what makes this truth haunting is that oxytocin does not create blind love. It creates selective love. While it builds deep trust within your circle, it also sharpens the boundary between us and them. Studies show that oxytocin can increase prejudice, making people more protective of their in-group while more suspicious of outsiders. In the brain, the same molecule that makes you hold your child tighter can also make you distrust the stranger across the street. This duality is unsettling. Oxytocin doesn't care about morality. It amplifies whatever bonds are most immediate. In a family, it deepens loyalty. In a cult, it strengthens devotion. In conflict, it can fuel aggression toward the enemy while reinforcing blind trust in your own side. It shows that the warmth of belonging and the coldness of exclusion spring from the same chemical well. The brain's use of oxytocin is a reminder of how fragile trust really is. What feels like unconditional connection may simply be chemistry, pulling your emotions, shaping your decisions, binding you to others with invisible strings that can nurture or manipulate you without your awareness. The brain structure alters in depression. Depression is not only a storm of emotions, it physically reshapes the brain. Neuroimaging studies reveal that key regions like the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex can shrink or lose volume in people suffering from long-term depression. The hippocampus, crucial for memory and learning, often shows measurable reduction, explaining why depression is tied to forgetfulness and mental fog. The prefrontal cortex, which regulates decision-making and self-control, weakens, leaving thoughts clouded and focus fractured. At the same time, the amygdala, the seat of fear and emotion, grows hyperactive, amplifying negative feelings until they drown out everything else. This structural change is not symbolic, it is tangible. Chronic stress and the constant flood of cortisol can literally damage and kill neurons, carving scars into the very circuits that shape who you are. That is why depression feels so heavy, why it lingers and resists reason. It is etched into the physical architecture of the brain. You are not just sad, you are living inside a mind that has been rewired to hold despair more tightly than joy. The emotional impact of this truth is staggering. Depression is often misunderstood as weakness or a lack of willpower, when in reality it is a condition where the brain itself has changed shape. The very organ that should lift you up conspires to pull you down, distorting memory, emotion, and perception. And yet, neuroplasticity also offers hope. Treatments like therapy, medication, exercise, and even meditation can help the brain regrow, reconnect, and reclaim lost ground. The scars of depression are real, but so too is the brain's ability to heal, reminding us that despair is not permanent architecture. It is a shape the brain can, with time and care, be coaxed to change again. The brain spreads memories across networks. A memory is not a single object locked away in one corner of the brain. It is a mosaic scattered across networks of neurons. When you recall your first kiss, for example, no single memory cell lights up. Instead, the scent of the air is stored in one region, the sound of laughter in another, the emotion in yet another. Your brain pieces them together in a flash, weaving fragments into what feels like a seamless moment from the past. This design makes memory both powerful and fragile. Because it is spread out, a single injury doesn't necessarily erase a memory. Other parts can help rebuild it. But this same system also leaves memories vulnerable to distortion. Each time you recall, your brain must stitch fragments back together, and in that reconstruction, details can warp, fade, or be replaced entirely. The more often you revisit a memory, the more it changes, subtly rewritten until it becomes as much invention as truth. The emotional weight of this fact is profound. The moments that define you, the love, the grief, the triumphs, are not permanent treasures safely stored. They are shifting puzzles, scattered and reassembled differently each time you touch them. What you think of as the truth of your life is fluid, rebuilt from scattered sparks across your brain, never exactly the same twice. It leaves a haunting realization. Memory is not a recording but a story, fragile and alive, always being rewritten by the very act of remembering. The life you cling to in memory may not be the life you actually lived, but the life your brain continues to create for you. The brain holds approximately 86 billion neurons. Inside your skull sits one of the most complex structures in the known universe, a brain made up of roughly 86 billion neurons. Each one of these cells is a living wire, capable of sending electrical signals and forming connections with tens of thousands of others. Together, they weave a network so vast that the number of possible connections dwarfs the number of stars in the galaxy. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is literal. Your thoughts, your memories, your personality all exist in the endless firing and rewiring of these neurons. The staggering scale of this number is almost impossible to grasp. 86 billion neurons, all working in silence, generating consciousness, emotion, language, and imagination. It means that every moment of love you felt, every fear that froze your chest, every memory that shaped you has been carved into patterns of electric storms racing across this vast network. But with that scale comes fragility. Each neuron is vulnerable, and every day thousands die, disappearing quietly without you even noticing. Age, disease, and stress chip away at the network, eroding its capacity to sustain memory and clarity. And yet, despite this daily loss, the brain adapts, rewires, and continues its billions of cells, ensuring that you remain you, even as pieces of you are constantly falling away. The haunting part is that the very essence of who you are, the spark of consciousness you feel so deeply, is carried in a fragile lattice of neurons, 86 billion lights flickering in the dark, each one expendable, and yet together they create a self that feels eternal. The brain connects 10,000 links per neuron. Each neuron in your brain is not just a single wire sending one message, it is a sprawling hub of connection. On average, a single neuron can form up to 10,000 synapses, tiny junctions where it communicates with other neurons. Multiply that by the brain's estimated 86 billion neurons, and you get a network so vast it creates more possible connections than there are stars in the observable universe. This web of connectivity is what makes your thoughts fluid, your memories layered, and your creativity boundless. One neuron firing can ripple across thousands of others, weaving together sensations, emotions, and ideas in ways that feel instantaneous. It is why a smell can trigger a childhood memory, why a single song can flood you with emotion, why a flash of inspiration can emerge from nowhere. But this staggering complexity also carries a darker weight. When connections break down through trauma, disease, or aging, the effects ripple too. Alzheimer's doesn't just kill neurons, it erases the bridges between them, dismantling the maps that hold your identity together. Depression and addiction hijack these synaptic links, trapping thoughts in loops of despair or craving. The same network that allows brilliance can also entangle you in suffering. It's humbling, almost terrifying, to realize that every decision you've ever made, every joy and heartbreak, every vision of who you are is just patterns of connection weaving across billions of links. The brain is not simply an organ, it is a universe of its own, where the collapse or creation of a single connection can change the entire story of you. The brain extends into the gut, with 500 million neurons. Hidden in the walls of your intestines is a vast network of nerve cells, over 500 million neurons, that scientists call the second brain. This enteric nervous system operates semi-independently, controlling digestion, gut movement, and even chemical production, all while constantly communicating with the brain through the vagus nerve. It's not just a system of plumbing, it's a living extension of your nervous system, humming with electrical activity and decisions of its own. What makes this fact so gripping is how much influence this gut brain has on who you are. It produces about 90% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter tied to happiness and mood. It talks to the immune system, influencing inflammation and disease resistance, and it shapes cravings, hunger, and even decision-making in ways you may never consciously realize. That gut feeling you get, the instinct that whispers before logic catches up, it may not be metaphorical at all. It may be your second brain speaking. The emotional weight of this truth is profound. You are not just your thoughts. Your identity, your moods, even your resilience may be swayed by the silent billions of neurons in your gut. When this system falters, through stress, poor diet, or illness, it can send distorted signals back to the brain, fueling anxiety, depression, or brain fog. What feels like despair of the mind may sometimes be the cry of an unhappy gut. The realization is unsettling. Your sense of self is not confined to your skull. The brain extends down into your belly, shaping not only how you digest the world, but how you feel about living in it. The brain blocks pain in emergencies. In moments of life or death crisis, the brain has the power to silence pain entirely. A soldier wounded in battle may keep running. A victim in an accident may crawl to safety with broken bones, and only afterward do they collapse in agony. This is not superhuman toughness. It is the brain's emergency override. Flooded with endorphins and stress hormones, the nervous system dampens or even blocks pain signals before they reach conscious awareness, allowing survival to take priority over suffering. What makes this so haunting is how easily your reality can be rewritten in a single instant. Pain, the body's most primal warning system, is not absolute. It is negotiable. Your brain can decide that knowing you're hurt is less important than escaping danger, so it hides the truth from you. The wound is still there, the damage is still happening, but your awareness is muted, delayed until the moment you're safe enough to feel it. This power explains why victims sometimes describe a strange calm during catastrophe, why survivors often remember the fear more vividly than the pain. It also reveals just how fragile your sense of reality is. If the brain can switch off agony at will, what else might it be filtering, twisting, or hiding from you? It is a chilling thought. The agony you dread, the scream you expect, may never come in the moment it should. Your brain, in its ruthless drive to keep you alive, may silence the warning altogether, only to let the pain crash down on you later, once survival no longer hangs in the balance. The brain without amygdala feels no fear. Buried deep in your brain are two almond-shaped clusters called the amygdalae, and they are the guardians of fear. These small structures are the reason your heart races at danger, why shadows in the dark tighten your chest, and why survival instincts fire before reason can even catch up. But when the amygdala is damaged or removed, something extraordinary and haunting happens. Fear disappears. People with rare conditions that destroy the amygdala, like the famous case of patient SM, can face situations that would terrify anyone else. Snakes coiling, armed threats, suffocating gas, and feel nothing. Their bodies do not tremble, their hearts do not surge, and their minds remain eerily calm. Without the amygdala, the primal alarm system is silenced. The very thing that evolution wired to keep us alive falls quiet, leaving only curiosity where panic should be. At first, this might sound like freedom, a life without fear, no nightmares, no crippling anxiety, no dread before risks. But the reality is far darker. Fear is not only suffering, it is protection. It keeps you from walking into fire, from trusting the untrustworthy, from leaping recklessly into danger. Without fear, people take risks so reckless they place themselves in constant peril, blind to threats that could end them. It's chilling to realize how much of your survival and your humanity depends on a tiny pair of structures you never think about. The amygdala is the reason you hesitate before danger, the reason you survive long enough to be here. Strip it away, and life becomes fearlessly fragile, a world where nothing feels dangerous until it's too late. The brain forgets under stress. When stress floods your system, the brain's delicate machinery for memory begins to falter. In moments of fear, pressure, or trauma, stress hormones like cortisol surge, hijacking the hippocampus, the structure responsible for forming and retrieving memories. Instead of encoding experiences clearly, the hippocampus becomes overwhelmed, leaving blank spaces, fragmented details, or distorted recollections. That's why people can't remember exam answers under pressure, why soldiers forget parts of combat, or why arguments leave you struggling to recall what was actually said. This forgetting is not weakness, it is survival. Under stress, the brain diverts resources away from careful thinking and memory storage toward raw reaction. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, takes control, priming the body to fight, flee, or freeze. In that state, remembering every detail is a luxury. Staying alive is the priority. But the trade-off is haunting. Once the storm passes, you're left with gaps where pieces of your life should be, memories warped by adrenaline and fear. Chronic stress deepens the wound. Over time, repeated floods of cortisol can actually shrink the hippocampus, impairing memory long after the crisis is over. People living under constant pressure may find themselves forgetful, scattered, unable to hold on to what matters. It is as though the brain is slowly erasing its own story in the attempt to cope. This truth is emotionally devastating. Moments of your life, entire pieces of your identity can be lost, not because they were unimportant, but because your brain was too busy protecting you. Stress doesn't just break your calm, it steals your memories, leaving you to wonder what parts of yourself you will never get back. The brain decides before awareness. Long before you believe you've made a choice, your brain has already set it in motion. In experiments using brain scans, researchers discovered that patterns of neural activity predicting a decision appear seconds before a person becomes consciously aware of having made it. The chilling implication is that free will, as you experience it, may be less about choosing in the moment and more about your brain presenting you with a decision it has already made. What feels like sudden inspiration, a snap judgment, or even a careful choice may simply be your conscious mind catching up to the electrical signals that have been firing beneath awareness. The motor cortex readies to move, the prefrontal circuits weigh options, and the decision is silently locked in place, all before the voice in your head claims ownership of it. You are not so much the author of your choices as the narrator, telling the story of what your brain has already set in motion. This truth is both liberating and terrifying. It explains gut instincts, the way you can feel pulled toward an action without knowing why. It explains mistakes you regret, choices that seemed wrong the moment you acted, as if you were a passenger watching your body obey impulses you didn't approve. And it leaves a haunting question. If the brain acts before you're aware, how much of your life is truly your own doing, and how much is destiny written in neurons firing before you ever knew? The unsettling possibility is that your sense of control is a beautiful illusion, crafted by a brain that keeps its secrets hidden until after the decision has already been made. The brain uses tiny areas for big functions. Inside the folds of your brain are regions so small and precise that a piece no bigger than a fingertip can control vast parts of your life. A sliver of the motor cortex moves your entire arm. A cluster in the temporal lobe stores the sound of every voice you've ever known. A pinpoint in the amygdala can unleash terror or calm with a single spark. The brain's geography is terrifyingly efficient, tiny patches holding the keys to enormous pieces of who you are. This means that a stroke, a tumor, or even a momentary lack of oxygen in just the wrong spot can strip away an ability you once took for granted. One small clot can erase speech. A few damaged cells can wipe out memory. A delicate region no bigger than a coin can hold your ability to recognize faces. And if it falters, loved ones can become strangers overnight. And yet, this fragility is paired with brilliance. By concentrating massive functions into tiny circuits, the brain conserves energy, speeds processing, and allows billions of tasks to happen at once. It is the ultimate compression system, packing the infinity of human experience into microscopic clusters of neurons. But there is something chilling in knowing your entire reality hangs on such delicate spaces. Your laughter, your fears, your ability to read these words, any of it could vanish if the wrong patch of tissue went dark. It leaves you with an uneasy truth. The you believe is vast, but the brain keeps it balanced on shockingly small and vulnerable pieces of flesh. The brain degrades memory when recalled. Every time you remember something, you are not pulling a perfect snapshot from storage. You are reopening a fragile file, and in the process of recalling it, you risk altering it. Memories are not solid recordings. They are reconstructed events. The moment you bring one into awareness, the brain pulls fragments from different regions, stitching them back together. But during this process, the memory becomes unstable, and when it is saved again, it may be subtly changed. This is why each retelling of a story feels smoother but less accurate. Why childhood moments you swear are vivid may be laced with details you never actually experienced. False memories slip in, not because you are lying, but because your brain rewrites the past each time you revisit it. Neurologists call this reconsolidation, and it explains why memory is as fragile as glass, reshaped by time, influence, and suggestion. The emotional weight of this truth is devastating. The memories that define you, the first kiss, the loss of someone you love, the triumphs you cling to, may not be what really happened. They are echoes, edited copies of copies, degrading with each recall until they are more story than fact. And yet, you believe them with absolute certainty because your brain does not tell you when the edits were made. What makes this haunting is that your identity is built on these shifting reconstructions. Who you think you are, the lessons you've learned, the wounds you carry, they may not exist exactly as you remember. Your past is not a fixed truth, but a living fiction, rewritten every time you dare to look back. The brain grows with exercise. When your body moves, your brain transforms. Exercise doesn't just strengthen muscles or burn calories. It fuels the growth of new brain cells, a process called neurogenesis. Most of this growth happens in the hippocampus, the region that governs memory and learning. Each time you run, lift, or even walk briskly, your brain releases a flood of chemicals, endorphins, growth factors, and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, that act like fertilizer, nurturing neurons and helping new ones take root. This is why people often feel sharper, more focused, and emotionally lighter after physical activity. The brain literally becomes stronger, wiring new connections, improving attention, and protecting itself against decline. In fact, studies show that regular exercise can slow or even reverse brain shrinkage caused by aging, delaying the onset of dementia and keeping memory intact for longer. It's not just about feeling better in the moment, it's about preserving who you are decades into the future. But the emotional weight of this fact lies in how closely your mind and body are intertwined. When you skip movement, when you live stagnant, your brain begins to wither quietly. Fog creeps in, resilience weakens, and stress leaves deeper scars. On the other hand, even a short burst of activity, a walk in the cold, a dance in your room, a climb up the stairs, can spark life back into the organ that defines you. Exercise isn't only a gift to your body, it's an act of protection for your memories, your identity, and your ability to keep becoming more than you were yesterday. Your brain grows with every step you take. The brain loses cells daily. Every single day, your brain loses neurons. Some die from natural aging, others from stress, toxins, lack of oxygen, or simple wear and tear. From birth, the human brain is endowed with around 86 billion neurons, but this number quietly declines as the years pass. For most of your life, you don't notice it. The brain is resilient, built with enough redundancy and plasticity to compensate for gradual loss. But the truth is unsettling. A small part of you disappears each day, and once a neuron is gone, it never comes back in the same form. What makes this fact haunting is that you never feel the dying. You don't sense the slow fading of cells that once carried a memory, a skill, or a flash of creativity. They vanish in silence, leaving their burden for surrounding neurons to carry. In youth, the brain easily absorbs the loss, rerouting signals and building fresh connections. But with age, as the daily toll continues, cracks begin to show: slower recall, weaker concentration, slips in short-term memory. And yet, even against this relentless erosion, the brain fights back. It creates new synapses, strengthens existing circuits, and in certain regions like the hippocampus, can even grow new neurons, a process called neurogenesis. Exercise, learning, and deep rest fuel this quiet rebuilding, giving your brain the chance to stay sharp even as time chips away at it. The chilling truth is that the brain is both dying and renewing at once. Every day you lose pieces of yourself, but every day, through effort and care, you can shape how much of your brilliance remains. It is a race between decay and resilience, fought in silence inside your skull. The brain has more links than atoms in the universe. The human brain is often called the most complex object we know of, and for good reason. Inside your skull, around 86 billion neurons reach out to each other, forming connections called synapses. Each neuron can make thousands of connections, creating a staggering network of links. When neuroscientists run the numbers, the total possible connections within one human brain outnumber the estimated atoms in the observable universe. This isn't just a statistic, it's a revelation of scale that is almost impossible to grasp. Every thought you've ever had, every face you've ever recognized, every fear, dream, or whisper of intuition is carried on this incomprehensible web. Every second, trillions of signals surge across these connections, lightning storms of information shaping the world you believe you see. And yet, this vastness is contained in just 3 pounds of tissue. Your entire reality exists in something you can hold in your hands, but within it lies a universe more complex than the stars above you. That realization is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It means that within you is infinite possibility, networks that could, in theory, store entire lifetimes of knowledge, create art never imagined, or solve problems beyond comprehension. But it also means your identity is fragile, dependent on delicate links that can be broken by injury, disease, or time. The haunting truth is that the greatest cosmos you will ever know is not in the sky, but in your head, a universe built not of galaxies and stars, but of connections firing silently in the dark, holding together the story of who you are. The brain delays dementia with bilingualism. Speaking more than one language doesn't just expand your voice, it strengthens your mind against decline. Neuroscience has shown that bilingual brains build denser networks of gray matter, especially in regions tied to memory and executive control. The constant mental workout of switching languages, filtering one while using another, forces the brain to develop deeper resilience. Over years, this resilience becomes a shield, delaying the onset of dementia by as much as 4 to 5 years compared to monolinguals. What makes this fact so powerful is the hidden protection it offers. While neurons everywhere face the slow erosion of age, bilingual individuals seem to hold their ground longer, sustaining memory and clarity when others begin to fade. Even in patients who do eventually develop Alzheimer's, symptoms appear later, as if the brain's dual language wiring buys precious extra time. But beneath the science lies an emotional truth. Every word spoken in a second language, every struggle to find the right phrase, every moment of mental effort is carving armor into the brain. What once felt like frustration, forgetting vocabulary, mixing grammar, hesitating in conversation, was actually your mind forging new connections that could one day save you from the terrifying silence of dementia. It's haunting and hopeful at once. A lifetime of bilingualism may not make anyone immortal, but it offers a buffer, a delay, a way of holding on to the self a little longer. To carry 2 languages is to carry protection, a quiet promise that your memories and your identity may endure when others begin to slip away. The brain releases endorphins with laughter. When you laugh, really laugh, the brain responds with a chemical storm that feels like a natural high. Buried deep in its circuits, the brain releases endorphins, the same chemicals that soothe pain and create euphoria during a runner's high. These endorphins flood through your nervous system, lowering stress, loosening muscles, and bathing your mind in warmth. Laughter isn't just a reaction to joy, it is a trigger that creates joy from within. The science behind this is startling. Endorphins latch onto the brain's opioid receptors, dulling pain while amplifying pleasure. It's why laughter feels like relief, why your chest unclenches after a good laugh, why even in dark times one joke can pierce through despair like sunlight breaking a storm. Laughter connects directly to survival. It tells your brain you are safe, that tension can release, that you can live another moment without fear. But the emotional weight of this fact lies in what laughter really means. It's more than comedy. It's medicine. A shared laugh strengthens bonds, making strangers feel like allies and friends feel like family. In hospitals, laughter therapy helps patients endure pain and recover faster. In grief, Laughter erupts like a lifeline, reminding the brain it can still feel alive. And yet, the brain's gift of endorphins carries a bittersweet truth. Laughter cannot be forced. Fake it, and the chemistry never comes. It must be genuine, born from connection, surprise, or absurdity. That's why laughter feels sacred. It cannot be commanded, only shared. In those rare moments, the brain rewards you with its purest drug, reminding you that even in suffering, there is still something left to feel worth living for. The brain can have PTSD interrupted. Trauma sears itself into the brain like fire on flesh, and in post-traumatic stress disorder, those scars never truly fade. They replay, they intrude, they hijack the present. But science has uncovered a chilling and hopeful truth. Those traumatic memories can sometimes be interrupted, altered, even softened, while the brain is trying to reconsolidate them. When a memory is recalled, it briefly becomes flexible, like wet clay, before it hardens again. In that fragile window, interventions, therapy, medication, even targeted electrical stimulation can weaken its grip, reducing its power to haunt. This discovery changes everything we once thought about memory. We imagine memories as fixed recordings, but they are fragile reconstructions, and trauma can be edited if caught at the right moment. Treatments like EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing, or certain drugs work during this window, dulling the sharp edges of terror, so the memory is no longer a weapon. The event is still there, but its claws sink less deeply. The emotional gravity of this truth is staggering. It means survivors are not doomed to relive their worst moments forever. The brain, which rewired itself around the horror, can be coaxed to rewire again, this time toward healing, but it also raises haunting questions. If memories can be altered, what does that mean for the integrity of who we are? Still, for those living in the prison of PTSD, this fragile opening is not just science, it is hope. The same brain that etched trauma into its architecture carries, within its wiring, the possibility of rewriting freedom back into place. The brain repurposes vision in the blind. When blindness takes away sight, the brain doesn't simply let the visual cortex go dark, it rewires it. The very area designed for processing light and images begins to take on new roles, transforming into a powerful hub for other senses. In blind individuals, touch, hearing, and even smell recruit the visual cortex, sharpening their perception to levels that often seem superhuman. A finger moving across Braille text, for example, can trigger activity in the same brain regions that once processed sight. This repurposing isn't just compensation, it's adaptation. Studies with brain scans show that blind individuals can see through sound, mapping space by echoes or footsteps with accuracy that rivals vision. Their visual cortex responds as if it were still processing images, but instead it builds pictures from auditory cues. The brain refuses to let such valuable real estate sit unused. It bends reality to make sure the person can still navigate, connect, and survive. The emotional weight of this truth is staggering. It means that blindness does not simply close a door. It forces the brain to build new ones. The organ that once gave someone sunsets and faces now sculpts worlds out of vibration, rhythm, and texture. This adaptation doesn't erase the loss, but it shows the resilience of the mind, how it refuses to surrender its ability to create meaning. There is something hauntingly beautiful about it. The brain, stripped of light, still insists on painting reality. It proves that perception is not tied to the eyes, but to the raw determination of the mind to shape the world, even in darkness. The brain reroutes pathways after injury. The brain is not a rigid machine. It is a living, adaptive network that can rewire itself when parts are damaged. After a stroke, trauma, or surgery, the brain often reroutes its pathways, forcing surviving neurons to take over the roles of those that have been lost. This remarkable ability known as neuroplasticity, is why people can relearn to walk, speak, or even see after injuries that should have left them permanently broken. What makes this so haunting is how the brain does it. Like a city rerouting traffic after an earthquake, it redirects signals along detours, forging new connections where old ones were destroyed. It does this silently, without permission, as though the brain refuses to surrender. Therapy, repetition, and sheer willpower strengthen these new paths, carving fresh roads through scarred terrain. For a stroke survivor practicing the same word over and over, each attempt is the brain laying down new tracks toward recovery. But this power is both inspiring and cruel. The brain can adapt, yes, but it rarely restores things exactly as they were. The rerouted pathways are slower, clumsier, and require exhausting effort. For some, fragments of speech return, but fluency never does. Movement returns, but without grace. And yet, within those limits, the human spirit finds triumph, reclaiming what should have been lost forever. It's chilling to realize your identity, your ability to move, to speak, to remember, can be shattered and yet rebuilt on different foundations. The brain is both fragile and indomitable, capable of breaking and healing in ways that reveal not just its strength, but the fierce will of the self to survive against all odds. The brain imagines phantom phone vibrations. You've probably felt it, that sudden buzz against your leg, the rush of expectation as you reach for your phone, only to find nothing there. This eerie sensation, known as phantom vibration syndrome, is the brain playing tricks on you. It happens because your nervous system and brain are hyper-attuned to the signals you expect. Constant phone use trains your sensory circuits to be on alert for vibrations, and when random muscle twitches, clothing shifts, or even nerve firings occur, the brain misinterprets them as the buzz of a notification. What makes this so haunting is how it exposes the brain's vulnerability to conditioning. Technology has rewired us. Just like a mother can hear her baby's faintest cry in the middle of a noisy room, your brain has tuned itself to the call of your phone. The anticipation of a message, the tiny dopamine rush of connection, programs your nervous system to hear signals that don't exist. It isn't your phone manipulating you. It's your own brain bending perception to meet your craving. And the emotional truth is stark. Phantom vibrations reveal how easily the mind becomes enslaved by expectation, how hunger for validation, contact, or distraction can manifest as false sensations. You're not just carrying a device, you're carrying a new organ of attention, one your brain has fused with so deeply it can't tell where your body ends and your phone begins. This unsettling illusion reminds us that reality is never fixed. The brain will invent what it craves, even a vibration that never came, binding you tighter to the endless cycle of anticipation and reward. The brain decides before you know. What feels like free will is often your brain running ahead of you. In controlled experiments, scientists have discovered that patterns of brain activity appear seconds before a person becomes consciously aware of making a choice. Electrical signals fire, motor regions prepare, and neural circuits align long before the voice in your head claims, "I've decided." By the time you feel ownership of a decision, your brain has already acted. This is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. It suggests that consciousness might not be the author of your actions, but rather the narrator, telling the story after the script has already been written by unconscious processes. Your gut instincts, your impulsive choices, even the sudden clarity of inspiration may all be the product of neurons firing in the shadows, only later handed to awareness as if you chose freely. The emotional impact of this truth can be jarring. If your brain is pulling the strings before you know it, how much of your life is truly yours? That instant when you reach for the cookie despite your diet, when you say the word you swore you wouldn't, when you leap before you think, it isn't weakness. It's your biology moving first, leaving your consciousness scrambling to rationalize afterward. And yet, within this unsettling reality lies a hidden power. Awareness can still shape what comes next. The more you train your brain through habits, reflection, discipline, the more its unconscious decisions will align with who you want to be. But the chilling truth remains. The spark of every choice is born in the dark, before you even know it exists. The brain alters waves in meditation. When you slip into meditation, your brain does not simply relax, it transforms. EEG scans show that meditation shifts the brain's electrical rhythms, quieting the frantic beta waves of everyday stress and replacing them with slower, steadier patterns. Alpha waves rise, bringing calm and focus. Theta waves deepen, pulling you towards states of intuition and vivid imagery. In advanced meditators, even powerful gamma waves emerge, linked to heightened awareness and moments of profound clarity. This is not imagination, it is measurable, physical change in the living fabric of your mind. The chatter of your inner voice softens as neural networks that usually race out of control begin to synchronize. Over time, consistent meditation doesn't just alter brain waves for a moment, it reshapes the structure of the brain itself, thickening regions tied to memory and empathy, while shrinking those linked to fear and stress. The emotional impact of this is staggering. It means you carry within you the power to rewrite your own brain, not with drugs or surgery, but with silence, breath, and attention. Meditation can quiet anxiety, sharpen focus, and awaken a sense of peace that feels like stepping outside the chaos of daily life. And yet, there is something haunting about it too. The same brain that floods you with panic, rage, or despair can be calmed by nothing more than your awareness of it. It suggests a terrifying possibility. Much of your suffering may not be the world torturing you, but your untamed brain, and you hold the key to quieting it if you dare to turn inward. The brain uses perception circuits for imagination. When you close your eyes and picture something, a face, a place, a sound, your brain does not use a separate imagination system. Instead, it hijacks the very same circuits that would light up if you were actually seeing, hearing, or feeling it in reality. The visual cortex activates when you imagine an image. The auditory cortex hums when you imagine a sound. And even the sensory pathways for touch can stir when you imagine the brush of someone's hand. Imagination is not fantasy. It is simulated perception. Your brain creating a ghost of reality using the same machinery built for truth. This is why imagining can feel so real. Athletes who picture themselves moving through a routine stimulate motor pathways as though they had physically practiced. People who rehearse conversations in their minds trigger the same speech centers as if they were speaking aloud. And those who relive trauma through flashbacks often feel it in their bodies, because the brain's simulation does not easily distinguish memory, imagination, and lived experience. The emotional weight of this is staggering. Your private thoughts can shape you as powerfully as the outside world. Picture success vividly enough, and your brain wires for it. Picture failure, fear, or rejection, and the same circuits embed those patterns as if they truly happened. Your imagination is not harmless. It is a rehearsal that changes you. It is haunting to realize that every dream, every fear, every scenario you replay silently in your head leaves footprints in the same circuits that define reality. In a very real way, you are living inside both the world outside you and the one your brain conjures, with the line between them far thinner than you want to believe. The brain mixes genes and environment for IQ. Intelligence is not written in stone, nor is it purely a gift of upbringing. It is the haunting dance between genes and environment. The brain's architecture is built from the blueprint of your DNA, shaping factors like memory capacity, processing speed, and attention span. But genes are only potential. Whether they ignite into brilliance or fade into mediocrity depends on the environment you grow in: nutrition, stimulation, stress, education, and even love. This is why two children with similar genetic potential can grow into radically different adults. A child born into fear, hunger, or neglect may see their brain's pathways dulled, their cognitive growth slowed. Meanwhile, another child, bathed in opportunity, encouragement, and stability, can see the same blueprint expand into remarkable intelligence. It's not nature versus nurture. It's nature through nurture. The emotional weight of this fact is heavy. It means that many who struggle are not limited by their biology, but by circumstances that choked the brain's growth before it could fully bloom. It also means that intelligence is not a fixed label. Your brain can sharpen, adapt, and even grow stronger through effort and enriched environments. Neuroplasticity ensures that learning, curiosity, and resilience can carve new pathways, regardless of where you began. But there is a haunting mirror to this hope. The same potential can be wasted. A brilliant mind born into the wrong environment may never awaken. The tragedy of unrealized intelligence whispers through every generation, proof that genius is not only about who you are, but also where and how your brain was allowed to become. The brain mimics serotonin on psychedelics. Psychedelics like LSD, psilocybin, and DMT don't create entirely new states of consciousness out of nowhere. They hijack the brain by mimicking serotonin, the neurotransmitter that regulates mood, perception, and sense of well-being. These compounds fit snugly into serotonin receptors, especially the 5-HT2A receptor, and in doing so, they push the brain into an altered state where perception unravels, boundaries dissolve, and reality itself feels rewritten. This mimicry is not gentle. It floods circuits that normally stabilize your sense of self and reality. Brain regions that usually operate separately begin to talk to each other, creating a storm of unusual connections. That's why colors pulse brighter, music feels like it seeps into your bones, and thoughts spiral into revelations that feel infinite. The brain is firing in patterns it never usually does, blending sensory inputs and collapsing the ordinary walls that separate logic, memory, and imagination. The emotional impact is profound. For some, it feels like transcendence, an overwhelming sense of unity, healing, and expanded consciousness. For others, it becomes terrifying, a plunge into confusion where the self feels lost or shattered. What's truly haunting is that this experience, mystical or terrifying, all comes down to molecules tricking your brain into believing they are serotonin. And when the drug fades, the echoes remain. Neural pathways have been shaken, sometimes rearranged, sometimes softened in ways that can relieve depression or trauma. But the core truth lingers. The visions, the insights, the chaos, all of it was born because the brain was fooled by a chemical twin of its own messenger of happiness, opening a door that it normally keeps locked. The brain reacts to imagined fears like real. Your brain does not draw a clear line between what is happening outside and what you vividly imagine inside. When you picture a terrifying scenario, a car crash, a humiliating moment, a shadow lurking in the dark, the same circuits that fire during real danger light up as if it were actually happening. The amygdala, your fear center, cannot always tell the difference between imagination and reality, so it floods your body with adrenaline, raises your heartbeat, and sharpens your senses as though survival were at stake. This is why nightmares can jolt you awake, drenched in sweat, trembling as if you escaped death. It's why worrying about the future can make your chest tighten and your breath shallow, even when you're safe in your room. The brain is built to prepare you for threats, and it would rather overreact to fiction than miss a real danger. But in doing so, it chains you to fears that may never come. The emotional toll of this is devastating. Imagined fears can paralyze you, ruin relationships, and steal joy from moments that are perfectly safe. They can keep you from trying, from risking, from living fully, all because your brain responded to an illusion as if it were truth. And yet, there is a darker beauty in this too. The same power that makes imagined fears feel real also fuels hope, vision, and creativity. The brain's inability to separate thought from reality means that what you focus on has the power to shape not just your emotions, but your very life. The haunting question is, are you letting your mind enslave you with fears that don't exist, or could you turn that same power into a force that frees you? The brain spreads Alzheimer's like infection. Alzheimer's disease doesn't just appear randomly in scattered parts of the brain. It spreads cell by cell in a way eerily similar to an infection. At its heart are misfolded proteins, particularly beta amyloid plaques and tau tangles. When a single tau protein misfolds, it can corrupt its neighbors, forcing them to twist into the same toxic shape. These damaged proteins then travel from one neuron to the next, passing along their flawed blueprint like a contagion. Over years, this chain reaction spreads through critical brain regions. It often begins in the hippocampus, where memories are formed, and then invades areas that control language, reasoning, and eventually even basic survival functions. By the time symptoms emerge, forgetfulness, confusion, disorientation, the infection-like process has already been burning quietly for decades. What makes this so haunting is the illusion of safety. On the surface, a person may look sharp, carry on conversations, and appear fully themselves, but underneath, their neurons are being poisoned, one after another, by a microscopic cascade that cannot be stopped. It is as if a shadow is moving through the brain, silencing cells, erasing memories, and reshaping identity in slow motion. This discovery has forced scientists to rethink Alzheimer's not as a sudden collapse, but as a long, creeping invasion. It means the disease is not just a loss, it is an active, spreading corruption, a silent storm that hijacks the very fabric of the mind. And with each misfolded protein that jumps to a new cell, more of the self is stolen, leaving behind a body that remembers less and less of who it once was. The brain of babies changes from pregnancy stress. When a mother is overwhelmed by chronic stress during pregnancy, her baby's brain does not emerge untouched. Stress hormones like cortisol can cross the placenta, flooding the developing nervous system. In the fragile architecture of a baby's brain, these hormones act like sculptors, altering growth patterns in regions tied to emotion, memory, and fear, particularly the amygdala and hippocampus. The result is a brain wired to expect danger before life has even begun. This reshaping carries haunting consequences. Babies exposed to high prenatal stress are more likely to be born anxious, restless, or hypersensitive. As they grow, they may show struggles with attention, emotional regulation, or even heightened risks of depression and trauma-related disorders. The womb, once thought of as a perfect shelter, is in fact a mirror of the mother's internal world. When she carries fear, her child's brain learns it too. The emotional weight of this fact is crushing. It means that suffering can pass silently from mother to child, not through stories or behaviors, but through biology itself. A mother's sleepless nights, her silent tears, her racing heart, all of it may etch itself into the very wiring of her baby's mind. And this inheritance is not a choice, it is survival. The baby's brain adapts to prepare for a dangerous world, even if the danger never comes. Yet, there is hope within this darkness. Support, love, and nurturing after birth can help reshape what was altered, softening the edges of fear. But the truth remains haunting. Long before we take our first breath, the weight of stress can begin to shape who we are, proof that the story of our minds begins in someone else's storm. The brain boosts immunity with optimism. Optimism isn't just a state of mind, it's a biological weapon your brain wields against illness. When you hold a hopeful outlook, your brain shifts its chemistry, dialing down stress hormones like cortisol while increasing neurotransmitters that regulate balance and calm. This change ripples through your body, strengthening immune cells, sharpening their response, and making you more resilient to infections and disease. It isn't magic, it's wiring. Your attitude alters the very defenses that keep you alive. The effect is so powerful that studies show optimistic people heal faster after surgery, fight infections more effectively, and live longer, healthier lives than those consumed by pessimism. The brain's belief in a better future becomes a physiological command, telling the body to prepare, to endure, to thrive. Optimism literally changes biology, programming resilience into your immune system. But the emotional impact of this truth cuts deeply. It means despair doesn't just feel heavy, it makes you physically weaker, stripping strength from the inside out. Chronic negativity and hopelessness flood the body with stress signals, leaving immune defenses sluggish, distracted, unable to fully protect you. In this way, thoughts become killers or healers, long before any doctor intervenes. Imagine the weight of that knowledge. Every hopeful thought is not just comfort, but medicine. Every act of belief in tomorrow is a quiet reinforcement of the walls that guard your life, and every surrender to despair leaves cracks in that wall, letting illness slip through. The brain is not just where hope lives, it is where survival is strengthened, proof that optimism is as biological as it is emotional.